What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 5 Pi Chapter 41 Buster Call. The two younger brothers looked at the marine surrounded by the edge of the beach, braked quickly, stopped, and looked ahead, their eyes full of vigilance. At this moment, the space in front of them suddenly rippled like water waves, and then a figure appeared silently. When they saw the figure clearly, their eyes lit up, and they said loudly, "Brother Silverhair, we have rescued the people in the mine." Oh, Sorata took a sip of wine, looked at the high mountains behind the pile of rocks, and was slightly lost in thought. Mine. It seems that this is an ore mine of the world government, but I don't know how important it is to the world government. If it matters. Thinking of this, he looked down at Bada's two younger brothers, and said, "Since they are all rescued, why don't you come to join us?" Lack of boat. Lack of boats. Okay, one of the younger brothers quickly said. At present, there are no less than 10,000 Ba Islanders rescued from the mine. Including the rescued slaves, it is conservatively estimated that there are also 20,000 people. As that much? Sorata stopped drinking, and then said, "There should be a pier on the island. Are there no boats on the pier?" "Yes, I have," another younger brother said. Boss snatched all of Marine's warships, but it was still not enough. Originally, there were not many ships on the island, and with Marine's warships, they could only hold more than 10,000 people at most, so I wanted it as barely enough to save all the people on the island, plus the boat we came on. Oh, Sorata nodded, so you are here to sail the boat? Yes. Sorata turned his head to look at Marine who was coming towards this side, his eyes flashed red, and the breath of the beach was immediately captured in his mind. Needless to say, with the help of Radish, Kuina's breath is fairly stable, but the breath of Ahua and the others is more chaotic. It's not easy to fight with the members of the CP organization. Let's go. Let's go by boat. As he spoke, he walked towards the beach first. Marine watched Sorata approaching, paused his footsteps, and spread out to both sides to make way for a passage. But Melisson didn't even look at Sorata, just passed him by, and walked forward resolutely. He wanted to see for himself what secrets there were on this island. Okay, at this moment, his movements and Sorata's movements paused at the same time, and then both of them looked at the sea at the same time. On the golden sea level under the setting sun, a group of masts with marine flags were gradually rising. In the blink of an eye, the mast rose, gradually revealing the 10 giant warships below. Advertisement. Sorata looked at the warship in the distance, turned to look at Melisson, and joked, "Well, I didn't expect your marine support to come so quickly, but I don't know who led the team this time." Melisson ignored Sorata, his eyes were fixed on the distant sea level from beginning to end, and as the warship approached, his pupils gradually shrank, and his face was full of disbelief. Buster Call. Buster Call. Sorata was taken aback for a moment, then his face changed drastically, he glanced at the warship in the distance, and then yelled at Melisson. "Old man, make it clear, it's really Buster Call." A serious look appeared on Melisson's face, he looked at Sorata and nodded. That's right, this configuration only has Buster Call. Are you Marines crazy? At this time, there are no less than 20,000 civilians on the island who are powerless. Sorata was furious, and the aura on her body burst out uncontrollably. Are you so indifferent to life? Still, you Marines have really reached the point of massacring civilians for the naming of the world government? What did you say? Melisson looked at Sorata with wide eyes. Why are there so many people on the island? Ask me why? Sorata looked at Melisson with a gloomy face. Isn't this the island you have been guarding? The more than 10,000 civilians of the Bath Kingdom on the island were not transported by your marine. More than 10,000 civilians. Melisson's eyes widened, flashing memories. He remembered that 3 years ago, the world government CP0 organization seemed to use the warships at their base to transport something. Now that I think about it, it was the civilians of the Kingdom of Bath who were transported back then. He always thought that the civilians of the Bath Kingdom were dead, but he didn't know that they were transported here by the world government. It turned out to be a mine island. Then why did Marine and world government give up? He, a senior Marine general at the same time as Garp, has been in the G10 branch for decades, and it makes sense. It is for him to ensure the tranquility of the nearby sea, so that this small island will not be disturbed. Now that the world government has issued a Buster Call, the real target may not be the silver-haired gang, but this small island, or the people and slaves on this small island. World government will not let the scandal here spread. Thinking of this, his eyes gradually became firmer, looked at Sorata and said, "You are going to stop Buster Call. Let me go with you. Although I am old man, I still have a certain face in Marine." Just you. Sorata looked at Melisson, raised her head and took a sip of her wine. Forget it. The Buster Call issued by the world government, let alone you, even Admiral can't stop it. If you really have justice in your heart, tell me where your ship is. There are so many people here this time, it's impossible to have only one warship on the pier. If there are multiple warships, the people on the island can be rescued safely at one time. Advertisement. After all, their boats are all small boats. If there are too many people on board, they will sail in the dark, and if the weather is bad, they may capsize. A ship. Melisson looked at Sorata, but he didn't insist. He knew that it would be futile for him to go. As Sorata said, once the Buster Call is issued, it is impossible to stop it, unless the person who gave the order came to stop it himself.
The order was issued by the world government to Marine Marshal Sengoku, and Admiral Kizaru and 5 vice admirals executed it. It is simply impossible to stop it. There is indeed more than one ship. He thought for a while, his eyes gradually became firmer. I can give you the boat, but you have to promise me that you must stop Buster Call. At least wait until we pick up the civilians and leave the island.
Because the shelling range of Buster Call is enough to completely cover this small island. Stop it. Sorata put down the wine gourd and hung it around her waist. Let's go. Take our boat and hurry over there. As for stopping Buster Call, I'm here, don't worry. As he said that, he turned around and walked towards the beach first, with a flash of excitement in his eyes. I hope that all the vice admirals coming this time are veteran vice admirals like Mellison. For him now, the general vice admiral, as long as he wants, can only be killed by him in seconds. As for Admiral, he had already detected the familiar smell of the bow of the leading warship. The big deal is early retirement. The last time I didn't fight this guy well, it was because his arm color couldn't effectively hit this guy's body. Big deal. This guy was specially called by Marine to restrain him.
This made the justice in his heart tremble a little. At this time, he remembered Sengoku's words, whether it's the world government, celestial dragons, or naval headquarters, you don't need to worry about it. As long as you are still on the side of justice, I will support you in any decision you make.
He was old anyway. I hope I can really see the true strength of this guy who always likes to pretend. Looking at Sorata's back, Mellison felt a little relieved, and then couldn't stop feeling sad. That's why I said that to him, but his justice has never wavered. In fact, they are right, as long as they stick to their own justice. After decades of Marine career, even if he knew the world government's behavior style, he had seen it with his own eyes 3 years ago. Thinking about coming to Sengoku is also very helpless. He never imagined that one day he would cooperate with the pirates to stop Marine.
Don't pay too much attention to other things, even if the other party is the world government or the celestial dragons.
Sometimes I can't resist, but this time is different. Chapter 42 Long time no see, Uncle Pikachu on the giant warship. Paluzolino watched the 2 small sailboats sailing towards the right of the island in the distance, and did not order an attack. Because a familiar breath is coming towards this side quickly.
He straightened his slightly bent waist, his eyes flashed red, and he turned his head to look at the mast of the warship. Coming. The vice admirals behind him were startled, and quickly turned their heads to follow Paluzolino's gaze, looking at the moon-white figure that suddenly appeared.
Is this the silver-haired Sorata who caused headaches for naval headquarters, world government?
You look really young. Sorata's teleportation, as well as his age, shocked everyone.
Well, you can't take this guy lightly. The red light in Kizaru's eyes never dissipated. Here he is the only one who has played against Sorata, although it doesn't even count as a warm-up. The shock brought by Sorata's teleportation is not inferior to these vice admirals at all. Yo! Sorata sat on the crossbar of the sail on the mast, looked down at the yellow figure below, and reached out to say hello. Long time no see, Uncle Pikachu. Pikachu? The vice admirals had a strange look on their faces. They turned their heads to look at Paluzolino, and then quickly put them aside. Kizaru looked up at Sorata, the corner of his mouth twitching. He stretched out his hand and pushed the brown sunglasses on his face, and said slowly to Sorata, "Well, silver hair Sorata, how scary." As he spoke, he raised his right hand, pointed at Sorata with his finger. The fingertips shone with golden light, and then a laser shot towards Sorata. Little devil. I can't let you run away easily this time. Oh, Sorata's eyes flashed red, and she turned her head. I think so too. I hope you can make me happy. The laser brushed his ear and shot back, and then exploded in the sky behind him. The flames of the laser blasts obscured the golden sunlight of the setting sun. The orange-red firelight shone on Sorata's body, making him seem to grow taller in an instant, making him feel full of oppression. You start the Buster Call directly, and leave this guy to me. To understanding, advertisement. The vice admirals glanced at Sorata, then stepped on the moonwalk, quickly, soared into the air, and headed towards the warships on the left and right. Well, can you stop being in such a hurry? Sorata looked at the scattered vice admirals, frowned slightly, and cut away. Kizaru looked at Sorata, folded his hands on his chest, golden light shone in his hands. Yada mirror. A beam of golden light appeared on Sorata's right in the blink of an eye, and then Kizaru at the bow turned into golden light, turned into an element, followed the golden passage formed by Yada mirror, and appeared on Sorata's right in an instant. He touched his chin with his right hand, golden light flashed on his right foot, and he kicked Sorata's waist fiercely. Speed is weight. Have you ever been kicked by the speed of light? Well, didn't you say everything? Don't be in such a hurry. Sorata's eyes flashed red, and she tilted her head to look at Kizaru, who suddenly appeared. Choke, Zon Kong got out of his sheath instantly, and quickly slashed to the right. Block, a collision sound resounded through the entire warship, and rushed towards the surroundings quickly with the wind pressure of the collision. I said, Uncle Pikachu. What? Kizaru didn't bother to correct the new nickname Sorata had given him. Pikachu is better than the insulting term, yellow monkey. Sorata looked up, looked at Kizaru through the golden light and asked, will the world government give you a bonus for this mission? Bonus. Kizaru paused with the hand touching his chin, then yelled at Sorata, stop kidding, silver hair. Didn't you say it all? First didn't join Marine just for the salary? Oh, Sorata replied softly. The obvious perfunctory state made Kizaru's face darken instantly. Sensing the warships still sailing below, Sorata's eyes flashed red, and observation haki instantly swept across the fleet of warships on the sea level. I can feel that with the naming of vice admirals, the marine soldiers on the warship became busy in an instant. This is not acceptable. Sorata looked up at Kizaru. Well, Uncle Pikachu, do you know the final consequences of this buster call? Do not know. You came here without knowing. Well, these things are a headache for the Marshal and the world government. We're just executors. Why do we think so much? Advertisement. Kizaru looked at Sorata. The corner of his mouth curled up. Well, I said silver hair, with me here, you can't stop buster call. Oh, Sorata looked at Kizaru, rolled his eyes, and then burst out with a domineering aura in an instant. Conqueror's haki? Kizaru looked at Sorata with a look of shock in his eyes. Trouble. Marine already knew that Sorata would have Conqueror's haki in Smoker's report, but they didn't know that Sorata's Conqueror's haki was so strong. This wave of Conqueror's haki, like a stone thrown into a calm sea, was rippled and rushed towards the surroundings quickly, sweeping past 10 warships in an instant. The world was silent, and then there were countless sounds of falling to the ground. There were tens of thousands of Marines on the 10 warships of the entire Marine, and more than 9,000 fell down. Only some Marine officers with strong will and good strength survived this momentum. Now what? This is why he has the confidence to stop Buster Call. As his strength improves, his courage is of course also improving rapidly. And he has also collided with top Conqueror's haki players like Golden Lion, which made his Conqueror's haki surpass Wong Luffy when he went to sea just 2 years later. Sorata tilted her head slightly to the right, easily dodging the laser beam. As long as there are no these Marine soldiers, Buster Call is a joke. With the hundreds of Marine non-commissioned officers who are still standing, even if he does nothing, they will not be able to send out the artillery cover that destroys the island. The corner of Kizaru's mouth turned up, and then he stretched out his right hand, with golden light on his fingertips, and quickly shot towards Sorata's head. As he spoke, he quickly retracted the knife, and then a flow of haki, glowing pink, covered Zon Kong. Wong Luffy can use Conqueror's haki to stun 50,000 people in the Fishman Island, and these 50,000 people are mermaids who are physically stronger than humans. Last time his armed color definitely couldn't hurt Kizaru, but this time it's different. This time is not the last time, growing so fast? Okay. It's terrible, but this time, he looked at Zonkong, felt the sharp edge above him, and withdrew his right foot. Whoosh! Seriously, use all your strength. These little tricks are useless to me. In the last fight, he could say that he just tried a little bit. He didn't feel threatened by Sorata last time. You guys are really scary. If it was him, it wouldn't be a surprise to stun the 10,000 or so Marine soldiers. Kizaru looked at haki emerging from Sorata, and put away the contempt on his face. Chapter 43. Hey, looks like you can't touch fish anymore. Kizaru's eyes flashed red, and he glanced at the warship with knowledge. It's really troublesome. Sorata looked at Kizaru, quickly retracted the knife, and then drew it. A flash of a sharp knife with a cool blue color, followed by the ear-piercing sound of drawing the knife, quickly slashed towards Kizaru. Draw your sword and chop. If you are not serious this time, you will die. Feeling the oncoming knife light, Kizaru's whole body burst into golden light. The knife light quickly cut across his chest, and then turned around. Ding, the knife is sheathed. It's as if Sorata didn't draw his sword at all. But from Kizaru's body that was cut in two with a knife, it can be seen that the knife, Sorata, came out. However, the entity was not cut. Sorata looked at Kizaru, with nebula in his eyes, as expected of Marine's top combat power. Such knowledge must have reached a very high level. Sorata knew very well about his own sword drawing speed. If he couldn't hit him head to head, he could only use faster and heavier slashes. I just don't know if this guy avoided his slash because he sensed it, elementalized it in advance, or because of the fruit's passivity. If the fruit is passive, then this guy is terrifying. Like Summit War's Akainu, he doesn't believe that Whitebeard's weapon color isn't the highest. It's okay for Akainu to be hammered by Whitebeard, which is the highest horror developed by Logia. Their fruit ability is equivalent to Armament Haki's highest use, so although Armament Haki can hit their entities, the damage to them is relatively shallow. It's like two knives with equal sharpness colliding with each other. No one can do anything to the other. In the end, it can only compare with the physical strength of the knife holder. Well, it's terrible. Kizaru looked at Sorata, pretending to be terrified. Stop kidding. Okay. Helplessness flashed across Sorata's face. That's why he didn't want to fight this guy. This guy looked obscene and spoke sarcasm, making it difficult to calm down and fight this guy. Marine 3 Admiral, only this guy can keep up with him in speed, so as long as this guy wants, he can keep pestering him.
But Akainu and Aokiji are different. Although these two guys are also very strong, they can't defeat him.
At this moment, a sound of stepping into the air came from all around.
The 5 vice admirals who left just now rushed towards this side quickly from other warships.
Just when they commanded the buster call to launch, a burst of Conqueror's haki stunned all the bottom Marines on the warship, so at a command. They had no choice but to step on the moonwalk and quickly approach the warship where Sorata was. They won't be able to launch buster call until Sorata is knocked down. Advertisement. Well, Sorata turned his head to look at the vice admirals surrounding him, and said with a light smile, I want to fight more with less, I hope you can all show your strength. As he spoke, his figure disappeared instantly. Careful. Berry looked at Sorata, who suddenly appeared behind the flying squirrel, and couldn't help shouting. However, although they are the veteran Vice Admiral and Marine Vice Admiral, they can't compare with Marizan. Although the flying squirrel had been driving the observation hockey and sensed Sorata's breath, he had no time to react, so he could only close his hands and quickly use the armament hockey behind him. Clang! Zon Kong's blade slashed fiercely on the back of the flying squirrel, and then the figure of the flying squirrel quickly shot towards the warship below under the great force of the blade. With a boom, it shot through the deck and slammed into the keel of the warship. Boom! With a creaking sound, the keel was knocked out of a big hole by the body of the flying squirrel. UB***********. D. Wearing a helmet engraved with a double-headed dragon pattern on his head, the Hawk Vice Admiral, Ghost Spider, in Marine looks very ferocious, looking at Sorata not far away, with his hair waving behind him. Life returned. With his life returned, his hair grew instantly, forming 6 arms like spider arms behind him. He held the knife in both hands, and the arm formed by the hair instantly pulled out the other knife on his waist, and swung it at Sorata. 8 swords style Ranbu. Countless white slashes quickly enveloped Sorata. Oh! Sorata turned to look at the ghost spider with curiosity in her eyes. Return of Life is a top-notch physical skill that can only be mastered by a very small number of Marine executives who know the Marine 6 styles. This ability can freely control the body, hair, and internal organs. As long as the consciousness is poured into it, it can freely control any place. Such a powerful body technique can even be used to quickly digest food, so as to quickly recover physical strength. It can only be digested quickly, instead of eating meat to restore physical strength like Wong Luffy, and it can also make him grow quickly. Facing countless slashing blows, Sorata quickly slashed through the air. Clang! Clang! Easily smashed the ghost spider's slash. For him now, such a slash could not even cause his eyes to fluctuate for a moment. Okay, at this moment, Hua Xiaoshan, who was smoking a cigar and always had a smiling expression, quickly drew his knife and rushed towards Sorata with a whoosh sound. Advertisement feeling the blade behind him, Sorata turned around and raised his right hand horizontally. Clang! He easily received Hua Xiaoshan's full blow. Well, the speed is good, but the strength is too bad. As he spoke, he pushed his hand upwards, and flicked Hua Xiaoshan's knife away, causing Hua Xiaoshan's body hanging in the air to take a step back uncontrollably. It's so strong! Hua Xiaoshan felt the power from the knife, his smiling expression froze, and his small eyes widened a little. Sorata didn't stop, he retracted the knife quickly, his legs bent. Looking up at Hua Xiaoshan, this guy is a role model for Marine in the eyes of the soldiers at the bottom of Marine because of his strong and gentle personality. But, what about role models? As a role model, he will still be beheaded. Draw your sword and chop. The cold knife light, like cutting through space, appeared on Hua Xiaoshan's chest in the blink of an eye. Fast, too fast. Hua Xiaoshan was sweating profusely on his forehead, and his small eyes were protruding. Although Iron Body can't move, it can increase his defense. He didn't even have time to withdraw the knife to defend, but only had time to cover his chest with armament hockey, accelerate the blood flow all over his body, and use Iron Body. It's too late, strong, too strong. Then, under the incomparable force from Zonkong Blade, Hua Xiaoshan quickly shot towards the rear, pierced the sail, made a few floats in the sea, and finally hit the distant sea hard. There was also the slash that was so fast that people couldn't react at all, hitting flying squirrels and burning mountains in an instant. At this time, Ghost Spider and Berry, who were still standing in the air, and Doberman, who had 2 X-shaped scars on his face and neck, all stared at Sorata solemnly, not daring to have even the slightest bit of sympathy, distracted. The sea water sank suddenly, and the water splashed in all directions, and the waves formed caused the warship to shake for a while. Boom! It was so fast that only the light of the knife was seen, but the knife was not seen. It's only been a breath or two since Sorata teleported behind the flying squirrel. Zonkong's blade collided with Hua Xiaoshan's chest, and there was a loud sound like the sound of a bell. They were not shocked by Sorata's strength, but by the speed of the slash. Facing such a strong man, they all felt helpless. The elusive teleportation made people have no idea where this guy would come out from. He wasn't Kizaru, he couldn't dodge a slash at such a speed. Clang! Chapter 44, One Sword Style Jihei God Slash. Well, it's terrible. There was a red light in Kizaru's eyes, and he scanned the warship below and the sea behind the warship with knowledge, and found that the flying squirrel and Hua Xiaoshan were not serious. Sorata's slash just now, only he can do it, but he didn't plan to do anything here, because his attack could easily destroy the warship completely. And there are so many Marine soldiers in the warship. He is not a Marine hawk, he still cares about the life and death of these Marine soldiers. At this moment, the warship finally approached the shallow sea area, then quickly moved upwards, plowed long ravines in the shallows, and finally stopped completely in the shallow sea area not far from the beach. Sorata glanced at the warship stop below, then looked up at the flying squirrel and Hua Xiaoshan who rushed out from the cabin and the sea again, and a smile flashed in his eyes. Although these people are not as powerful as Melisson, their armament hockey has reached the 3rd stage. So he couldn't kill them with a single blow like he could instantly kill the black gun. His random slashes could only leave a non-fatal shallow wound on their bodies. Such a strong person can be used as Kuina's whetstone. Although these guys all carry knives, not all of them are sword masters. With a knife, it's just because a knife can do more damage than a fist. As for Jian Hao, there is only Ghost Spider. He glanced at the Ghost Spider, and the corner of his mouth curled up. I'll let you be the whetstone for Kuina to become a great swordsman. Thinking of this, his figure disappeared in a flash. Looking at Sorata, who suddenly disappeared, the eyes of the 5 vice admirals were red, and their whole bodies were tense, alert to ultimate. Especially the flying squirrel and the wet Huashaoshan. They just personally felt the horror from Sorata's slash. Okay. Their gazes all turned to the beach in the distance, only to see that Sorata, who was still surrounded by them just now, had already stopped on the beach at some point. Well, come on, Marine. Sorata stood beside Kuina, tore off the wine gourd, and took a sip with her head up. A blush flashed across his face. He lowered his head, looked at the warship in the distance, and said loudly, "Come on, come and let me have fun. Whether you can go back alive depends on your strength. You be ******************************* D. Don't be too arrogant." The 5 vice admirals, looking at Sorata, rushed towards the beach with a whoosh. Well, do you want to have fun? Kizaru folded his arms across his chest. Yada mirror. Advertisement like teleportation, it appeared directly above Sorata. If you want to have fun, then I will accompany you to have a good time. He looked at Sorata below, his right foot was golden, and he quickly kicked into the air. Whoosh. A beam of golden laser light that was obviously bigger than his finger, a huge laser light, shot down quickly. Here he doesn't have to be tied down. Red light flashed in Sorata's eyes, and he kicked his feet on the sand. Shave. With a swish, it quickly shot towards the shore. When he and Kuina had just turned their heads away from the laser, there was a bang where they were standing before, and a huge explosion occurred, and the beach below was suddenly blasted by a laser into a bottomless pit. Well, is this the destructive power of Marine Admiral? Sorata put the wine gourd back on her waist and looked at Kizaru with surprise in her eyes. With this guy's speed and attack, as long as this guy is willing, no pirate should be able to reach New World. But he is just too lazy. A fruit that is enough to change the pattern of the sea was wasted in vain. He is worthy of being the shining man who ate the obscene fruit. Seeing the 5 vice admirals rushing towards him, Kuina pulled out the word, he Dao, kicked the ground with both feet, and rushed straight towards the ghost spider. Jianao's aura can be discerned at a glance, okay. The ghost spider looked at Kuina, paused slightly before rushing forward, then swung the knife quickly, colliding with Kuina. Stay out of the way, brat. Apparently he didn't take Kuina seriously. But the other 4 vice admirals didn't stop, they still rushed towards Sorata quickly. Seeing the 4 vice admirals rushing past and rushing towards Sorata, Kizaru touched his hands in front of him, with his right hand clasped, his left hand wide open, and he gradually pulled out a handful of golden yellow admirals shining with golden light from between his hands. Big sword. Amazon Cloud Sword. This guy not only has a great fruit ability, but he may also be a great swordsman. 2 years later, he and Pluton, Rayleigh, fought with swords at the Sabodi archipelago. Tien Kongyun's sword is a lightsaber formed by his fruit ability. In terms of hardness, it is not inferior to the Great Quick Sword, but I don't know if it can compare with the Supreme Great Quick Sword. Then he kicked his feet, followed the 4 vice admirals with a whoosh, and quickly attacked Sorata. Long-distance strikes are of no use to this guy, he has no choice but to choose close combat with Sorata. And now it is no longer a question of playing more and playing less. It's a question of whether they can beat it. This guy's teleportation is too troublesome. Although his movement is fast, it can only be in a straight line, and sometimes he can't keep up with Sorata's attack rhythm. Advertisement he already felt this, as if Sorata suddenly appeared behind the flying squirrel, and he couldn't effectively rescue it. Oh, siege? Sorata looked at the 4 vice admirals rushing towards him, especially the lightsaber in Kizaru's hand, and the excitement in his eyes instantly covered his entire face. He faced the 4 vice admiral and Kizaru without fear and rushed towards them. Get rid of these 4 vice admirals first, and then fight Kizaru well. Thinking of his eyes kicking, the Conqueror's haki erupted instantly, and then quickly entwined on Zonkong under the override of his space domain. If you want to quickly deal with these 4 vice admirals and make them lose their combat effectiveness, other attacks will either kill them directly or not be powerful enough, so now we can only use his low-end version of Conqueror's entanglement. It is actually very simple for him to kill them, as simple as just one knife, but it is not so simple to make them lose their fighting power. He didn't want to kill these guys, because no matter what these guys said, they were also important figures in maintaining the stability of the world. If they were all dead, the sea would not completely riot, and it was unknown how many people would die by then. Anyway, these guys are no threat to him, isn't it? One sword style, Juhei, God Slash. Sorata stood still, stepped on the ground with his front foot, the ground instantly sank, his feet were bent, and his waist was slightly lowered. Then he held Zonkong in his right hand, and quickly drew the knife, facing the 4 vice admirals rushing up and quickly slashed upwards. Go. I saw a huge crescent-shaped purple-black slash, quickly cut through the space, and appeared in front of the 4 vice admirals in an instant. Boom. There was not even a slight pause in the collision between the chop and the knife, and the chop cut off the knives in their hands without hesitation, and then quickly slashed on their chests. With such a close-range slash, they had no way to escape. Numerous small purple-red lightnings appeared out of thin air around the slash. Seeing the huge slash with purple-red lightning in front of them, their faces were extremely gloomy. They can only block with the sword at the same time, and put armament hockey on the sword and chest. Clang, before they had time to think about it, watching the oncoming slash, they felt a sense of mental oppression at the same time. They knew that Sorata was strong, but they didn't feel any fatal threat from the previous attacks on Flying Squirrel and Huashaoshan. At least let them fight for a while, otherwise how can I explain to naval headquarters? But, the pupils of the 4 vice-admirals shrank simultaneously. 4 emperors-level figures? Clang, really Conqueror's winding? Conqueror's winding? The second sound was a louder collision sound, and then the armed defenses on their chests collapsed in an instant. In an instant, their bodies were smashed towards the sea behind by the force of the slash, and the slash then it rubbed their chests, flew over them, and slashed towards Kizaru in the sky. Do you want to use the big move as soon as you come up? Want to escape, but can't escape. Chapter 45 Kuina's Promotion. Well, how scary. Silver-haired Sorata, Kizaru, behind the 4 vice-admirals, looked at the oncoming slash, his mouth shrugged helplessly, and his body sank downward. The slash flew past his head, and quickly slashed towards the sky above the sea level behind him. A red light flashed in his eyes, and he turned his head to look at the 4 vice-admirals who slammed into the sea with a boom, feeling relieved. Fortunately, he is not dead. If these 4 vice-admirals are dead, then there will be big trouble. The Firebird hiding behind the pile of rocks in the distance held up the camera and took crazy shots on the beach. His face was flushed and his eyes were red with excitement. It's too strong, one knife, another knife. Unlike Bass Island, although Sorata killed thousands of people on Bass Island, those people were a bunch of weak chickens after all. To say it was shocking, it was even more intense now. Those are the 4 veteran vice-admirals of Marine. Click. A sound resounding throughout the world attracted him. Let his gaze involuntarily look towards the distant sky, only to see the end of the distant sky, under the afterglow of the setting sun, sky. The sky cracked. A beam of extremely dazzling golden light projected from the cracked sky and spread across the entire sea ahead. This scene. Firebird's mouth trembled, his head was dizzy, and his eyes were dull. Is it really possible for humans to do it? It even cut the sky open. He couldn't imagine how strong the energy of Sorata's sword was, but judging from the cracked sky alone, it seems that the world's #1 swordsman is only at this level. Seeing the purple-black slash rushing past him, and hearing the voice from the sky, the ghost spider couldn't help being taken aback. He had only seen such a powerful slash from the 4 emperors of New World. He was dumbfounded. Kuina wouldn't be dumbfounded. Facing the 8 swordsman who was more armed than her, she cheered up. The ghost spider is the strongest person she has met and fought since she went to sea. She looked at the ghost spider and waved her right hand quickly. A little bit more. She felt that she was just a little bit close, and she could be promoted to the 3rd stage with her arm color, and then with her aptitude, she could be promoted to the great swordsman in an instant. Clang, the ghost spider turned around and moved forward with both hands, blocking Kuina's knife. There's no time to focus on other things. He turned his head to look at Kuina. This indistinct woman behind the silver hair made him feel a little threatened. And judging from the power coming from the knife, this woman's power is no less than it. His swordsmanship is even higher than him. In this short fight, he can only rely on his deep armament hockey to entangle with life return in Kuina. Although he had the upper hand from the beginning, judging from the situation of the fight. Advertisement: this guy is actually growing rapidly during the fight. If she really becomes a great swordsman, then, no. He shook his head, gritted his teeth, and stared at Kuina with a gloomy face. He must not let this guy go so smoothly. You want to use me as a whetstone, don't you? His hair danced in an instant, and 6 knives immediately slashed towards Kuina, then go die. Looking at the 6 knives coming towards her quickly, Kuina's eyes flashed red. Can't hide. Then he quickly kicked his legs on the ground, and with a whoosh, he quickly backed away. Want to run? The ghost spider looked at Kuina, also kicked its feet on the ground quickly, followed Kuina, and the knife that cut towards Kuina still followed her. He really can't beat that silver-haired guy, but you, a little pirate with a bounty of 20 million berry, can he still beat you? Kuina looked at the ghost spider with the same indifference on his face, showing no sign of panic. Feeling that the blade was about to stick in front of her, in her line of sight, time seemed to pause suddenly. Everything around slows down. Her pupils ultimate contracted, and just between life and death, she felt as if a shackle had been opened in her body. Then she quickly retracted the knife, paused her body, bent her legs slightly, and stared at the ghost spider. Clang, at this moment, Hidao's words came out of the sheath instantly. One knife style Juhei Yanhui. There was a flash of the knife, and it was divided into 3 parts in an instant, and quickly chopped towards the ghost spider's head, chest, and lower limbs. Broke through. Swordplay and hockey break through at the same time, allowing her to perform a 3-in-1 slash that she has never been able to do before. Yanfan. Sorata had given it to her a long time ago, but she still couldn't cut it out. Even if it was cut out, only one knife was real, while the other 2 swords were illusory. It is different now, the 3 sword lights are all real. Okay. The ghost spider looked at the oncoming Sanbadeogwang, and its eyes were red. Impossible. He yelled at Kuina. How could you be promoted so quickly?
Nothing is impossible. There was a smile in Kuina's eyes, and the corners of her mouth were slightly raised. She then looked at the ghost spider, her eyes turned cold.
Next, if you can't take it, you will die. Stop kidding, it's up to you. The knife that the ghost spider rushed forward instantly returned to the defense, surrounding everything in front of him. Clang, 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 the triple impacts acted on the knife in front of him at the same time, causing his body to shoot backward quickly. Advertisement C. Plowed a long furrow in the sand. Ghost Spider exerted strength on his feet and stood still, feeling the force from the knife. Lifting his head, he stared at Kuina solemnly. The power has become so much stronger. No wonder he can follow that silver hair, this guy is also a monster. Kuina raised the knife in front of him, looking at armament hockey above, a glimmer of joy flashed in his eyes. Although she had known for a long time that she could be promoted to great swordsman, the promotion came so fast and so suddenly, which made her feel a great satisfaction and joy in her heart. In fact, her advancement is a matter of course. From going to sea to now, she has fought the most times. In addition, her aptitude is not bad at all, and she has the constant teaching of Sorata, a great swordsman, so she will be surprised soon. Kuina put the knife back into its sheath, looked at the ghost spider in the distance, leaned forward, bent her legs slightly, and made a gesture of pulling out the knife, then held the handle of the knife with her right hand, and quickly drew the knife and slashed. One sword style EI slash wave. I saw a huge crescent-shaped silver-white slash, quickly slashing towards the ghost spider. Cut a deep crack in the beach between her and the ghost spider. I've really been promoted to great swordsman. Seeing the oncoming slash, the ghost spider frowned and its pupils shrank. If there was a little hesitation before, then when he saw Kuina slash a huge slash that only a great swordsman could slash, he couldn't help feeling that he had lived on a pig all his life. Think of him as a dignified marine vice-admiral, known as the Eight-Sword Swordsman, who has killed countless pirates with his sword, and he did not really reach the realm of the great swordsman until he was almost 30 years old in middle age. Although he, a great swordsman, can't slash the ultra-long distance slash like Kuina in front of him, there is no doubt that he is indeed a great swordsman. Looking at Kuina, young, two-colored hockey, superb swordsmanship, and now he has been promoted to a great swordsman. However, he didn't have much time to think about it. Seeing that he was about to slash in front of him, the 8 long knives on his body were wrapped around armament hockey in an instant, and he attacked fiercely. It's not over yet, he put his feet on the ground and rushed towards Kuina quickly. He exhaled slightly, and stared at Kuina with unprecedented seriousness in his eyes. Stop it for me. Boom, under his power, Kuina's slash immediately changed its direction, rubbed against his blade, and in a flash of sparks, it quickly rushed to the sky, and finally disappeared at the end of the sky. The ghost spider felt the power of the slash, and the veins in his hands popped out, and his arms grew bigger in an instant. Hey, it's hard. Clang, now I can only fight with Kuina in melee, and I can't let her make this kind of slash again. Kuina's slash instantly collided with his knife, and then quickly pushed him to slide backwards. Even if he is a great swordsman, he has just been promoted. He doesn't believe that he will lose to the opponent. He is also a great swordsman. Now she will not be forced back by the ghost spider. It's too early to defeat me. He nailed his feet to the ground as hard as he could, and then swung his hands upward against the slash. Seeing the ghost spider rushing towards her quickly, Kuina kicked her legs on the ground and headed forward with a knife in her hand. Chapter 46. It's nice to be young. Behind the island is a hidden cave that only allows one ship to pass through. Inside the cave is a huge pier. At this time, countless people on the pier are rushing towards several warships and dozens of large and small sailboats in the harbor. These people were all dark and thin, and pitted scars could still be seen through the holes in their tattered clothes. And some of the wounds were still bleeding yellow and red. From the looks of it, it was obvious that it must have been beaten by the whip for a long time, new injuries added to old ones, and it would not heal at all. However, their eyes at this time were not gloomy with despair, but filled with the brilliance of hope. Because their king, the king of their Bath kingdom, Bath Bada, came to rescue and welcome them. They moved forward excitedly. The brilliance in their eyes was even inferior to the golden brilliance of the setting sun. Bada stood on the pier next to the Liberty, looking at his citizens of the kingdom of Bath passing by him one by one. Looking at their appearance, deep self-blame flashed in his eyes. These citizens can be said to be entirely caused by his impulse 3 years ago. But he didn't know that even if he didn't save Leah, the world government would find an excuse to destroy the kingdom of Bath. Who is the kingdom of Bath? The closest to here, on one of the marine warships, Melisson and his adjutant stood quietly at the bow, looking downcastly at the civilians on the pier. Chi-Chi was silent, while the marine soldiers behind them quickly helped maintain order and delivered food and water to everyone on board. After going through this incident, their justice will definitely be impacted. They just don't know how many of them who face the darkness of the world for the first time can truly stand firm in Marine's justice and the justice in their hearts afterwards. They glanced at Melisson standing at the bow, and everyone's heart was not as calm as it appeared on the surface. Blatantly violating the world government and helping to transport these civilians and slaves, you will definitely be punished by naval headquarters and world government afterwards. But it doesn't matter, their base leaders are not afraid. What are they afraid of? Thinking of this, they looked at the emaciated civilians who were gradually filling the entire deck, and the trace of hesitation about punishment after the incident flickered in their eyes. What is justice? What they are doing at this moment is justice to them. After everyone boarded the boats on the hidden pier lined up one by one, rowed out of the pier in an orderly manner, set sail on the sea outside the cave, and headed towards Base Island. At this moment, everyone was attracted by a loud voice. Everyone looked up at the sky together, and saw a scene they would never forget in their lifetime. I saw that in the distant sky, the whole sky was suddenly cut open by something with a huge crack, and the clouds were pouring into this crack like seawater. Through the crack, they can even see the starry sky that is invisible during the day. Advertisement in the setting sun is penetrating through the crack, swaying down below with a golden light that is not dazzling. This ray of light is like the light of hope in the eyes of the civilians and slaves on these ships. Although it is the afterglow, it is warm enough. It actually did this step. Mellison stood on the bow of the warship with a cigar in his mouth, looking up at the sky with surprise in his eyes. Is it made by Silverhair? Dai Wei, who was standing beside Marison, looked at the crack in the sky with shock on his face. Even though he knew that only silver-haired people on the island could perform such a slash, he still couldn't help asking. Mellison didn't answer, because they all knew who did it. On the bow of the Liberty, Bada and the others also heard the sound and raised their heads together. Indigo is not used to it, and the three of Ahua looked at the sky with excitement. They have seen such a scene more than once, but every time they see it, they can't help being excited. These three guys were covered in bandages. Instead of resting in the infirmary, they insisted on running out to watch the fun. It seems that the spirit of the battle with the CP organization has not been completely exhausted. Compared with the three of Ahua, Bada is much better. They didn't encounter particularly strong resistance on the way to save people. They were all some strong but not strong mine guards. Although he still can't make a full shot, it is easy to deal with the guards. It took them half a day to rescue all the people, mainly because the mines on the island were too complicated. Although the island is not big and there are not many mines, the passages in the mines are like countless antholes, extending in all directions. This made them take a lot of detours. If it weren't for the full search and rescue, and the help of the civilians and slaves in the mine, they might not have walked the entire mine now. Bada looked up at the sky, and then turned his eyes to the right. At this time, the ship had sailed a certain distance, and he could already see the beach where they landed on the island before. Buster call. Although he had already known everything about the pier from Indigo, when he saw the 10 huge warships stranded outside the beach in the shallow water, he still couldn't help but feel a little scared. If only he and his little brothers came this time, they would have been destroyed together with this small island by now. These ships are not the warships we usually see, but huge warships specially built for destruction. 2 or 3 ships can destroy a small country, but now there are 10 ships. Thinking of this, he looked at the 2 battlefields fighting on the beach in the distance, and the gratitude in his eyes became even stronger. Thanks. Okay, don't look, our challenge is not over yet. Indigo laughed and patted Bada on the shoulder. Night sailing on the Grand Line is not a small challenge. Advertisement. Bada turned to look at Indigo with a serious face and firm eyes. The hardest part has been blocked by Sorata, and we will leave it to us. Well, don't be so nervous, we have a world-class navigator on board. Calical. Indigo laughed and turned to look at Aloe. Aloe, I will leave it to you next. When Aluo heard Indigo calling him, he quickly turned his head to look at Indigo, and then met Bada's gaze. His eyes flashed with confidence. Don't worry, I'm an ant-man who ate an ant fruit, and I can feel changes in the surrounding weather within a certain range. Bada looked at Aluo with gratitude in his eyes. As long as he sailed on the Grand Line, there would be no ships that are not afraid of the weather here. He believed in Arlo. No, he believed in everyone in the Silver Hair Pirates. Because they not only saved him, but also saved the whole kingdom of Bath. Thank you, Arlo. Ha ha ha. Aluo stretched out his hand and patted Bada on the shoulder. Thank you so much. Ha 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 ha. As he said that, he laughed out loud. HMPH, what are you proud of? Proud. Looking at Aluo's proud face, Awa raised the bar subconsciously. What are you talking about? As soon as Aluo stopped laughing, he turned his head to look at Awa, frowning slightly. What? Isn't it just that you can sense the weather? If it weren't for my radish, you would have fallen on the battlefield long ago. You be ****************************** D. Do you want to fight? Come. As they spoke, the heads of these 2 guys were pushed together. Bada looked at Aluo and Awa in surprise, and wanted to go up to fight, but just as he was about to act, Adao stopped him. Adao smoked a cigarette and looked calmly at the beach in the distance. Don't pay attention to them, these 2 guys are born with conflicting personalities, and they have been fighting since childhood. Said he waved his hand. It's okay. Oh, Bada looked curiously at Aluo and Awa who were already facing each other with fists and feet, the corners of his mouth raised, and a smile gradually appeared on his face. He almost forgot that, except for Indigo, the silver-haired gang was all 17 or 18-year-old boys. It's nice to be young. Chapter 47 1 Sword Style Yanwi. On the beach, Sorata paused for a moment when Kuina was about to be slashed by the ghost spider, but he held back. When he saw Kuina break through at the moment when the sword was about to hit him, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but he let out a big laugh. Ha 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 ha. Don't dare to be distracted now. Kizaru looked at Sorata, turned into a golden light, and appeared in front of Sorata in an instant, holding the Amazano sword in his hand, and slashed it down without hesitation. Well. Red light flashed in Sorata's eyes, and the Zonkong Hufa in his hand appeared on his head one step ahead of time, just in time to collide with Amazano Cloud Sword. Turning to look at Kizaru, he smiled lightly and said, The old man doesn't talk about martial arts. He actually attacked me, a young man, and almost let you succeed. Yo, stop joking. As he said that, Kizaru raised his hand, then held Amakongan's sword and slashed at a faster speed. Isn't there nothing wrong? Haha. That's right. Sorata turned the knife in his right hand, and then moved upwards, colliding with Amakong Yunjian. I thought I was cut just now. It's terrible. When the blades of the two clashed, golden light splashed everywhere, and the wind pressure was like a 10th level typhoon, ruthlessly blowing up the gravel on the ground, blowing towards the surroundings like a sandstorm. Clang, clang. During the fight, Kizaru looked down at Sorata and shouted loudly, "You be asterisk 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 D, don't talk like an old man, okay?" Oh. Sorata casually made a perfunctory sound, then looked up, through the golden light of Amakongan's sword, looked at Kizaru's more wretched face under the golden light, with the corners of his mouth upturned, and laughed. It's scary, Uncle Pikachu, I didn't expect you to be such a great swordsman. It seems that everyone underestimates you. Although the fighting time is not long, but Kizaru can keep up with his speed of swinging the sword, it seems that he has practiced. If you say that this guy's arm color and observation hockey are not strong, I'm afraid you won't believe it. Yo, did you see all this? Kizaru looked at Sorata, who kept swinging the knife and hitting him, his chin leaned forward, his face shrugged, and he said a famous sentence. How scary. Silver-haired Sorata. What follows is a real life and death struggle. As soon as the smile on Sorata's face closed, his whole body surged, a flowing pink armament hockey wrapped around Zonkong's blade from his arm. Then he swung the Amakongan sword away, holding the knife with both hands on one side of his body, pointing at Kizaru with the tip of the knife, with his legs slightly bent, looking up at Kizaru with nebula in his eyes. Advertisement. One knife flow swallow return. Zonkong disappeared, and there were only 3 red and black blade lights in the shape of a crescent moon, cutting towards Kizaru's head, chest, and lower limbs respectively. As fast as lightning, there is no reaction time at all. The moment Kizaru was blocked by Sorata with his sword, it was as if he was being targeted by something extremely deadly, which made him feel as if he was being stabbed by needles, and the alarm bells rang loudly in his heart. Danger, ultimate's danger. The moment the knife light came, he couldn't even react, only had time to put armament hockey in front of him. Clang, Tien Kongyun's sword, segmented into 3 sections, the blade light did not stop at all, and then quickly slashed at his body. Clang, instantly chops his armament hockey through his body. Just when he was about to breathe a sigh of relief, the light of the 3 spatulas, like a swallow in flight, suddenly slashed back and landed on his back in an instant. Puff, blood splattered everywhere. Then the knife light cut across his body and returned to Sorata's hands. It wasn't until then that he saw Zonkong that Sorata was holding in both hands. This is what Yan Fan really looks like. The reason why it is called Yan Fan is because the slash will be like a swallow turning. When you slash out, you can also slash back, making people defenseless. The golden ions converged into Kizaru's figure on the beach not far from Sorata. He stared at Sorata solemnly, and reached out to rub his back. Then he looked down at bloodline on his palm, no contempt in his eyes anymore. It actually hit him, it's terrifying. This guy's slash just now was so fast that he didn't have time to elementalize it in advance, so he could only put on the arm color first. If the arm color didn't block it in front, he would have been able to slash him with the first strike. The knife on the back was caused by his pure carelessness. Although he was elementalized the moment the knife light came, he was still cut. Although the wound was not deep, it was equivalent to a little bit of skin to him, but being able to really hurt him proved that this guy had already reached the top level in the world. It's terrible. Silver hair. Sorata put away the knife, stood still, pulled off the wine gourd, took a sip, and looked at Kizaru with a chuckle. Didn't you say it all? Be careful, this is your own carelessness. Then he shrugged, blame me, ha 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 ha, advertisement. Kizaru stared at Sorata, took off the brown sunglasses that he had been wearing all the time, just like Sorata said, he was indeed careless. Since getting the invincible sparkling fruit, he has hardly been injured. Usually when dealing with pirates, 1 foot is 1 foot, but since meeting Sorata, the situation has changed. Not only is this guy fast, he can't hit him due to his teleportation from a distance, and he swings a knife even faster in close combat, which makes him completely unable to take advantage of it. Such a person made him feel completely helpless. Hey, it's troublesome. Kizaru sighed in his heart. In fact, with his aptitude, armament hockey should have been the highest, but his sparkling fruit is too invincible, which made him never have the opportunity to use armed color to fight against the enemy, so he was hit by Sorata with all his strength. Chopped armament hockey. He looked at Sorata, put away the contempt in his heart, and his face became serious for the first time. Then he folded his hands in front of his chest, recondensing the Amazono cloud sword. Sorata looked at Kizaru. The wine gourd was hung back on his waist, armament hockey entangled himself in the sky, kicked his feet on the ground, and rushed towards Kizaru quickly with a whoosh. For the two of them, ranged attacks are useless at all, only melee. Clang, Zonkong and Tiankong collided again, golden light splashed everywhere, then quickly separated, and then quickly collided again. The sandstorm reappeared and gradually intensified, blowing the waves from the shore and pouring them back into the sea. They fought from the beach to the sea, to the sky, and to the island. It seemed that the only sound left in the whole world was the impact of their blades. This sound lasted the whole night. When the sun came out of the sea, the whole world suddenly turned golden. Kizaru also turned into another sun in the sky, constantly looking down, and the laser was firing from the huge crater in the center of the island. 8-foot Chong Guyu. Well, uncle, isn't it useless to say everything? Kizaru turned into the sun, and a muscular figure with a bare upper body suddenly appeared in the sky behind him. Sorata looked at the sun below, and slashed down with the knife in his hand without hesitation. Clang, Kizaru showed his figure, and the Amakongan sword in his hand blocked Sorata's knife, and then quickly shot downward. Boom! Gravel splashed and potholes collapsed. Then, as if some mechanism had been triggered, the entire island shook, and collapsed one after another, causing the middle part of the entire island to sink tens of meters. Chapter 48 Buster Call still going on. Air. The golden light flashed, and Kizaru condensed into a figure. He looked at Sorata, leaned his chin forward, and said with a choked mouth, "It's so dangerous, I was almost buried in it." As he said that, he looked down at the cave like an ant's nest exposed due to the collapse, thoughtfully. "Is that the goal this time? You really can't let the outside world know?" From these mines, he can even see countless skeletons in the pits specially used for throwing corpses. It must be a lot of people who have died in these mines in the past few decades. Stop kidding, okay? Sorata withdrew her gaze from looking down, and turned to look at Kizaru. "You old man, you are really terrifyingly strong. Fighting all night, except for the 3 shallow wounds left on this guy's body by the first knife swallow." The guy was unharmed. Although Kizaru can't do anything to him, but he can't do anything to Kizaru either. Although teleportation seems invincible, but if you want to hurt someone, the moment you teleport past, you must swing your knife. For those who are well informed and have rich combat experience, this moment is enough for them to deal with it. His space domain can't restrict such a strong person yet. And this guy's fruit development has really reached a very high level. Even if he hits this guy with the blade wrapped around emission, it won't do much damage to this guy. To compete with these Logia's top powerhouses, they can only be exhausted until their physical strength declines, and they can't maintain their elementalization, otherwise they really won't be able to win. On the sea outside the island, 10 warships were floating there. The warships had long been out of the shallow waters under the wind pressure of the Sorata and Kizaru battles. And outside the infirmary on one of the warships, the non-commissioned officers of 10 warships all stood in the aisle. Their eyes were fixed on the door of the infirmary, and their faces were unprecedentedly dignified. Although the doctor said that the 4 vice-admirals are not in danger of life, but the infirmary has not been opened, so their hearts have been hanging. As for going to the island to help Vice-Admiral and Peluzolino Admiral, forget it. When they go, they just add to the chaos, and they still have this bit of self-knowledge. At this time, creak, the door of the infirmary was suddenly opened from the inside, and the non-commissioned officers quickly stood up and surrounded them. Advertisement. He asked several doctors who came out of the infirmary. "How is it, doctor, are the 4 vice-admirals all right?" "It's fine, and fortunately it was delivered in time, otherwise it would be really difficult to perform surgery. It's also fortunate that there are enough people on board to find matching blood. Otherwise, we can only return to the voyage as soon as possible to rescue them." "Those 4 vice-admirals." The leading doctor took off his gloves and waved his hands. "Don't worry, the wound is deep, but it's not fatal enough. I'm awake now, you can go in and have a look." As he spoke, he parted the crowd and led the other doctors behind him out. The one-night rescue also made them terribly tired, so they should go to have a good rest now. As he walked, he murmured in his heart, "That silver hair is really scary. He actually injured the 4 vice-admirals so badly, it is said that only 1 knife was used." Thinking of this, he couldn't help shivering, as if the domineering aura that stunned him was about to come again. Being stunned is not a good experience. In the infirmary, more than a dozen colonels entered together, while other non-commissioned officers waited at the door. In fact, the marine soldiers on the ship had woken up a long time ago, but the vice-admirals were still in a coma. The Ghost Spider Vice-Admiral and Peluzolino Admiral were still fighting the silver-haired pirate on the island, and they couldn't get off for a while. The decision is to wait until the vice-admirals who are qualified to give orders wake up. After the colonels entered, they breathed a sigh of relief when they saw the vice-admirals leaning on the 4 medical beds. Then they quickly stood in a row and saluted the vice-admirals. "Hello Huashaoshan, Flying Squirrel, Doberman, Stallo Berry Vice-Admiral." Huashaoshan, smoking a cigarette, with a smile on his face as always, his eyes squinted, as if they were not open, he looked at the colonels and asked, "What's going on outside now?" A colonel took a step forward and said seriously, "Master Ghost Spider is still fighting against Blue Hair, while Master Peluzolino is fighting Sorata in the center of the island. Since Lord Peluzolino and Sorata are fighting too fast, it's impossible to see clearly, so we don't know their situation now." But what? Doberman, whose face seemed to be gloomy, asked. The colonel hesitated for a moment, and then said, "However, Master Ghost Spider is not in very good condition. Judging from the battle between him and Lantha, the opponent seems to have unlimited physical strength, causing Lord Ghost Spider to suffer a lot of injuries." Blue Hair? The flying squirrel showed doubts on his face, and then he thought of something, and a flash of clarity flashed in his eyes. "It can't be the little girl Kuina from the silver-haired pirates. If I remember correctly, her arrest warrant is only 20 million berry? Advertisement. It has grown to the point where it can injure ghost spiders so quickly." He was amazed as he said that. No one in the infirmary could answer the flying squirrel's question. The colonel looked at the flying squirrel, and asked, Master Vice Admiral, do you still want to complete the buster call? This is their main task this time, and it is also the question they have been waiting for all night. There has never been a buster call like this one. It has been half a day and not a single shell has been fired. Buster call. The Vice Admirals were all taken aback. They almost forgot the main purpose of this time. Before landing on the island, Paluzolino gave them instructions, and the target was not the silver-haired group, but the island. In the past, when dealing with big pirates, the buster calls were all far away to wash the ground with shells. Even if the big pirates know Conqueror's hockey, their hockey can't radiate so far, so they can't pose a threat to the soldiers on the warship. But the silver-haired guy is different. This guy can fly, teleport, and appear directly on their ship. At such a close distance, the Conqueror's hockey broke out, not to mention the bottom marines. Even some non-commissioned officers who were not strong enough were stunned and fell to the ground. The flying squirrel tore off the quilt covering his lap and sat up. Vice Admiral. The colonel looked at the flying squirrel with concern. The flying squirrel stood up, took the marine justice cloak at the side, and waved his hand. It's okay, it's just a little bit of an injury, it's still fine to walk. As he spoke, he put his coat on his body, turned his head to look at the 3 vice admirals lying on the bed, and said, I'll go out and have a look, you guys have a good rest. Facing Sorata's slash, he was the last one, so relatively speaking, he was the least injured, and he can still walk up to now, but the 3 of Huashaoshan can't even walk. After speaking, he took the lead and left the infirmary with the colonels. The 3 vice admirals lying on the bed wanted to struggle to get up, but the pain in their chests told them that it was better not to move. They had no choice but to look at the back of the flying squirrel, their eyes full of resentment. Facing Sorata this time, they did lose. This guy's slash made them feel like facing the 4 emperors' attack alone. Powerful, ridiculously strong. If their armament hockey hadn't blocked 99% of the damage, they might have been split in 2 on the spot. Chapter 49. Have we forgot something? On the deck of the warship. The flying squirrel walked to the bow amidst salutes and greetings. Looking at the ghost spider on the beach, panting heavily, with many wounds on the front and rear, the flying squirrel couldn't help looking at the pink figure that was constantly fighting the ghost spider. I sigh in my heart. You are so young. How long has it been since such a young great swordsman appeared? And that silver-haired, same young man, but already the world's top powerhouse. He thought about it in his head. Unexpected. Even the devil's descendant, Deathless Bullet, known as the ghost's successor, could not be so difficult to deal with. The silver-haired guy is as difficult to deal with as the 4 emperors. The 4 emperors are difficult because there are a large number of characters in the pirate group that can rival Marine Vice Admiral or even Admiral. If it is a single person, Marine is not afraid or worried. And the silver-haired guy is an extremely difficult character in itself. It can be said to be another Golden Lion, do not. It should be said that it is much more difficult than Golden Lion. Because this guy wants to kill these vice admirals, it can be said to be very easy. Take this time as an example. In fact, they didn't feel the killing intent on Silverhair, or else these vice admirals and these 10 warships. Hey, thinking of this, he sighed again, headache. The colonel stood behind the flying squirrel, waiting for his order. No one stopped the buster call. It was up to the flying squirrel, vice admiral, whether to shell or not. The flying squirrel's eyes were suddenly attracted by a loud, bang, sound in the center of the island. The battle is so fierce, it's a pity that he has retired now and cannot fight again. Looking at the heavy smoke and dust rushing from the middle of the island, the flying squirrel's eyes froze, turned to look at the colonels, and said loudly, Everyone go get ready, the buster call hasn't stopped. Although the silver hair can be caught, the island is still going to be destroyed. This is a hidden mission. He wasn't worried about Paluzolino and the ghost spider. Such shelling didn't hurt them at all. To understanding. The colonel saluted the flying squirrels in unison, turned around to greet the non-commissioned officers behind them, and moved quickly. After a while, countless huge cannon barrels protruded from the cabins below and above the deck of the entire marine fleet, 10 warships. Without hesitation, countless flames flashed, and amidst the sound of shelling, countless shells quickly flew towards the entire island. Round, round, round. The whole world was covered by shells. What? In the middle of the island, Sorata and Kizaru looked at the sky at the same time, only to see countless black shells suddenly appearing in the sky outside the smoke and dust, blocking out the sunlight. Well, it's really spectacular. Sorata turned to look at Paluzolino, and said with a light smile, You Marines don't want to destroy you together, do you? Advertisement, ha ha ha. Do not make jokes. Kizaru looked at Sorata, frowning, wanting to hit but not wanting to. Headache. Sorata saw Kizaru's state, pulled off the wine gourd, tilted his head to avoid a shell, and took a few sips with his head up. Huh, cool, fighting Kizaru has added a lot of experience to him. This guy is the strongest he has met so far. Although their fighting methods are very similar, it is because of the similarity that he can find himself in the battle. Insufficient, so as to improve. He put down the wine gourd. Dink cut empty into the sheath. Since Kizaru doesn't want to fight anymore, he can only stop. He took one last look at Kizaru, and the myriad of countless shells below disappeared into the air. Well, Uncle Pikachu, I'll fight with you next time. This time I'll go first. Take your time. Play. Kizaru looked at Sorata who disappeared, the corner of his mouth twitched. Do you think the battle between you and me is just a game? He didn't think too much, stepped on the countless flames below, turned into golden particles, and disappeared in place. On the beach, Ghost Spider was holding knives in both hands, the blades were pitted. If these 2 knives hadn't been blessed by his armed color, they would have been broken along with his 6 knives. He tensed up, staring gravely at the figure that appeared beside Kuina. Silverhair, why are you here, Paluzolino Admiral? Okay. Sorata withdrew her gaze from Kuina, turned her head to stare at the Ghost Spider, and chuckled lightly. Tell me, Uncle Pikachu, that guy is probably killed by your artillery fire now. Hey, stop joking. The Ghost Spider yelled at Sorata, and then said, how could Paluzolino Admiral lose to you, and lose so quickly? Well, did you see all this? Sorata looked at the Ghost Spider, the corners of her mouth raised, it's really scary. Then the smile on his face faded away, he stared at the Ghost Spider, and rolled his eyes. You guys still have a knife, do you still want to fight? As he spoke, he touched the handle of Zonkong's knife with his right hand. If you still want to fight, then let me be your opponent. The Ghost Spider was stunned by Sorata's aura, and then the veins popped out on his forehead, and he said angrily, Pirate, who do you think you are facing? Find out who you are, even if you are a character like the 4 emperors, don't make me take a step back. This guy is indeed a character. He is Vice Admiral, a hawk from Akainu's faction. He pursues the concept of complete justice. Oh, interesting. Sorata looked at the Ghost Spider and slowly stepped forward. As he moved forward, a strong mental pressure acted on the Ghost Spider. This guy was also the first marine hawk he met, and he was determined enough. To be honest, he still appreciates the idea of resolutely fighting pirates pursued by these guys, but there is one thing he disagrees with, and that is to attack civilians. As for colleagues, advertisement on the battlefield where the 2 armies are fighting, retreating not only disturbs the morale of the army, but also plays a leading role in executing these marine soldiers who are afraid of dying in battle and plan to escape. For this, he agrees. The Ghost Spider looked at Sorata, who was getting closer, and bent slightly. He looked up at Sorata, gripping the handle of the knife tightly with both hands. It can't go on like this. For the cloak of justice on his back, for the justice he is firm in, even if the 4 emperors are facing him, he dares to swing the knife. Thinking of kicking his feet on the ground, he rushed towards Sorata quickly. Well, stop playing. At this moment, a golden light flashed, and Kizaru's figure was condensed between the Ghost Spider and Sorata, Silverhair. Do you still want to fight? Seeing Kizaru's appearance, Sorata stopped walking and gradually put away her momentum. He waved his hand, and a smile appeared on his face again. It's just a joke, how could this Uncle Ghost Spider be so frightening? The Ghost Spider stopped the moment Kizaru appeared, and the corner of his mouth twitched when he heard Sorata's voice. Are you joking? Do you know that as soon as you appeared, you used your aura to suppress me, which made me really feel your killing intent? Sorata turned around, walked to Kuina's side, met Kuina's gentle eyes, smiled slightly, and reached out to rub her head. Let's go. It's time to go back and continue sailing. It is good. Kuina put away the knife when Sorata appeared, and his eyes were always watching Sorata tenderly. Well, I have to wait a while. Sorata looked left and right, and the figure disappeared instantly, and then reappeared in an instant. Firebird looked at Sorata, who fell from the sky like an angel, and shed tears uncontrollably. Yes, I said I forgot something. Sorata took off the wine gourd and drank it with Chaoyang. He suddenly touched his chin and thought of something. Kizaru stood on the spot with a calm expression, quietly watching Sorata unfurl the sails, and sat on the sails with Kuina, as if riding a flying carpet only in the magical world, quickly lifted off and left. How did he know that Sorata almost forgot about him? If he really forgot, then this guy would be a real tragedy. Kuina didn't even raise her head. I forgot about a guy named Firebird. This battle was too suffocating. He quickly controlled the sail and flew into the depths of the island that was already full of flames. He learned a lot and kept sweeping across the island. Finally, he found this poor guy in a collapsed underground cave. Sorata and Kuina sat in front of the sails, cuddling each other. There was an extra piece of cloth in his hand, and when he unfolded it, it turned out to be a sail from a marine warship, with the symbol of marine and a corner of a seagull figure on it. The filming was done well, but the middle of the island suddenly collapsed on a large scale. If he hadn't been lucky, he might have turned into a meatloaf. It seems that nothing is done, but in fact it is done. The Ghost Spider just wanted to go forward, but was stopped by Kizaru. Let him go. We can't stop him. The Ghost Spider looked up at the sky, a strong unwillingness flashed in his eyes. You be *********. Air. Looking down at Kuina, he said, have we forgotten something? Because there are countless shells outside. Chapter 50. These young people are like monsters, it's scary. Looking at the flying carpet that disappeared into the sky in the distance. Kizaru and the Ghost Spider turned their backs to the countless flames behind them, stepped on the moonwalk, and quickly returned to the warship. This endless buster call ended with the complete collapse of the Ore Island. The Silver Hair Pirates didn't catch anyone, Marine didn't suffer any casualties, but the CP organization was a bit miserable. The CP0 that came this time, all 4 members of the team were killed, and the members of other CP organizations were almost wiped out. Even if there are still lucky CP personnel on the island who did not die, they will be buried forever in the countless mines below the island under the baptism of countless shells, accompanied by the bones of the countless slaves they tortured to death up. Thinking about these cruel guys, even if they go to hell, they can't be comfortable. After all, There are so many resentful souls waiting for them below. The Buster Call bombardment continued for no less than an hour, causing the entire ore island to drop several meters. Marine's warship then stopped shelling, and then under the command of the officer, with the rising sun on their backs, they returned to naval headquarters and departed for Marineford. It was still the original warship, in the same seat. Kizaru lay on the deck chair, took the tea handed over by a marine soldier, picked it up, took a breath, then leaned forward with his lips and took a sip. He let out a breath and fell limply on the recliner. Comfortable. Quests and the like, there is no such thing as touching fish and drinking tea. Silver-haired monsters, let naval headquarters and world government have a headache. He is just an ordinary admiral who clocks in at work. At this moment, the flying squirrel came over with a large phone bug in his hand. Standing beside Kizaru, he said with a serious face, "Perusalino Admiral, the headquarters is on the phone. Marshal Sengoku is waiting for your report." "Oh," Kizaru lazily replied, took a sip of tea unhurriedly, let out a breath, put down the teacup slowly, and then looked up at the flying squirrel. When he saw the bloody gauze on the flying squirrel's chest, he was taken aback for a moment, then slowly sat up straight, took the phone and put it on the table in front of him, looked at the flying squirrel and said, "Okay, I see, you go to rest first. Those 3 guys are all right. It's okay, it's just that I can't act now, oh." Advertisement. Kizaru picked up the microphone on the phone bug, turned his head and stared at the flying squirrel. "What are you still doing here? You have suffered such a serious injury. If you don't take a good rest, go quickly, don't disturb me here." Flying squirrel looked at Kizaru, his serious face softened slowly, straightened his waist, and gave a military salute. "Okay, Pelusalino Admiral." After speaking, he turned around and walked towards the bedroom on the boat. Although his injury was the lightest compared to the other 3, it was still a serious injury after all, so it was really not good for him to stand here all the time. Kizaru looked at the back of the flying squirrel, shook his head, and muttered, "Really, can't you treat yourself and your body better? Just learn from him, isn't it good to fish for nothing? Hey." He raised the microphone and said into the microphone, "Moses, Moses, Moses, Moses. Okay, Pelusalino, let's report the result of this Buster Call." At this moment, the head of the phone bug on the table in front of Kizaru suddenly changed into Sengoku's appearance, even the seagull on the head was the same. "Oh." Kizaru touched his chin, thought for a while, and asked, "Is this Buster Call?" Not a single member of the Silver Hair Pirates was caught. Didn't catch any. As if it had been expected long ago, there was no surprise on the phone bug's face, it just asked calmly. "The order from the world government, the real target, where's Ore Island?" The Ore Island was completely destroyed, that is, all the people on it were rescued by the king of the Bath Kingdom, Bada. That's okay, anyway, the real goal of the world government is that small island. The phone worm paused, and then said, "This time in the battle with the silver-haired gang, what is their strength?" Hearing this, Kizaru's face became serious, and he said to the microphone in a serious tone, "Master Marshal should know that I haven't been injured since I ate the sparkling fruit, right?" The phone bug nodded, "Yes, indeed. But the silver-haired guy left 2 stab wounds on my back this time. Although I started to underestimate the enemy, I fought with the mentality of fighting against the 4 emperors, so I was injured by him. You should know his strength." "Can it hurt you?" Naval headquarters, Sengoku's office, only he and Suru are in the office at this time. After all, this sudden Buster Call is a secret mission of the world government, and no one knows about it except them and the vice admiral of the mission. Sengoku propped his hands on the table, and when he heard Kizaru's reply, his eyes behind the lens suddenly froze, and his face was full of solemnity. Advertisement. "Oh, it's troublesome now." Crane sat on the side, frowning, looked at the phone bug in front of Sengoku and said, "Perusalino, silver hair can hurt you. Armament hockey should have reached a very high level." "Hey, Staff Crane is here too." "Hello." Kizaru greeted the phone bug, and then said, When I first fought this guy, I didn't feel any threat, but this time it's different. I feel like this guy hasn't used his full strength. Then the guy is exuding a deadly threat all the time, let me fight him, and I have never dared to be distracted in the slightest, so I have a tie with this guy, he can leave whenever he wants, I stop him I can't stop it." Speaking of this, Kizaru paused, and then said, "And this guy's Conqueror's hockey seems to be able to entangle." Conqueror's winding? Hearing this, both Sengoku and Suru's eyes flashed with shock at the same time. This kind of ability, in this world, can only be found by a handful of top powerhouses. Think of the age of silver hair. Their shock was even greater. At this age, when this guy reaches his peak in his 20s, how powerful he will be. Another Whitebeard, Roger. Yes, it's the Conqueror's entanglement. Although the attack power of the Conqueror's entanglement of the 4 emperors is different, it is not something that ordinary people can follow. He used Conqueror's entanglement, and seriously injured the 4 vice admirals except the ghost spider. I was right behind the 4 vice admirals. I felt that the guy's knife was not intended to kill people. The angle was a bit off. The 4 vice admirals, I'm afraid I'll die on the spot. Why is there no ghost spider alone? Sengoku asked. Ghost spider. As soon as this guy landed on the island, he was entangled in blue hair. Blue hair? Confusion flashed across Sengoku's face. Isn't this little girl just a swordsman? Even if she can beat Smoker, she can't fight Ghost Spider. Sword hero. Kizaru put the microphone on the table, lay back on the recliner, took a sip of tea, and then said, "The blue hair and the Ghost Spider were indeed suppressed in an instant, but this little girl is really scary. Oh, you actually got promoted to great swordsman during the battle. In the next battle with the ghost spider, he suppressed the ghost spider even more. After fighting all night, the ghost spider was injured a lot, but the blue hair didn't seem to have fought much at all. Having said that, he paused for a moment, then leaned forward with his chin, held his mouth shut and said, "These young people are like monsters one by one, it's really scary. They don't know that Kuina has a Hua's radish on her body to replenish her physical strength at any time. I am afraid that this information will not be known until the ghost spider has dealt with the injury." Chapter 51 Seeds. That's when Sengoku and others were shocked by the youth and strength of Sorata and Kuina. Sorata took the sail of Marine and slowly landed on Base Island, on the roof balcony of one of the two still intact royal palaces on Spring Island. Watching Sorata and Kuina come back intact, Bada and Leah breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, only Bada and Leah were on the top of the palace. As for the three of Ahua, these three guys were too tired. As soon as they returned to Bass Island, they fell on the bed and haven't woken up until now. These three guys are indeed tired. They fought with the CP organization for a long time, and they were seriously injured. They also sailed on the Grand Line for a night. It's no wonder they aren't tired. That, the silver-haired boss. As soon as it landed, Firebird couldn't wait to stand up, and said to Sorata, "I'll go and pass the news to our president first." "Okay." Sorata looked at the bloodshot eyes of Firebird, patted him on the shoulder, and said with a light smile, "Go. Say hello to me and your president by the way." To understanding. Firebird turned around quickly and rushed into a room in the palace in a hurry. The news this time will definitely shock the world, not the news of Bass, but the silver-haired Sorata. With such strength, I think the president will be as excited as him. Even though they had raised Sorata's strength as much as possible before, they never expected that this guy would have the strength no less than the 4 emperors of King's Landing New World. Compared with the news of Sorata, the news of Bass is incidental. Wars happen every day in this world, people and even countries perish every day. Although the news of Bath is incidental, Firebird will not be perfunctory at all, because this is a deal between their newspaper and Sorata. The news of Bath and the news of Ore Island will spread all over the world in an instant along with the news of Sorata. World government probably never dreamed that there would be a frontline reporter from the World Economic News Agency among the people who followed Sorata this time. Although Kizaru knew that there was such a person on the island, he didn't know who it was and didn't take it seriously, so he didn't pay attention to it and didn't report it to Sengoku. As a result, news of Bath will spread all over the world without the world government knowing it at all. They thought that if the Ore Island was destroyed, the truth would be destroyed. This also allowed the Kingdom of Bath to spend the first and most dangerous few days. In the past few days, the world government has not taken any measures. This time, it is doomed. Advertisement. It is doomed that the world government will make a big embarrassment. Buster Call has no beginning and no end, and it was exposed that celestial dragons robbed a princess of a country and wiped out a franchise country. This kind of scandal. The biggest scandal was the scene of tens of thousands of skinny Bath citizens appearing on the pier of the mine island with slaves at the same time. And the countless dead bones under the mine island. Presumably this will definitely weaken the prestige of the world government. Don't think about it too much, it's a later matter. On the roof of the palace at this time, Leah and Bada all looked at Sorata and Kuina gratefully. "Okay, I've been fighting for a day and a night, and I'm so hungry, is there anything to eat?" Sorata looked at Bada, reached out and patted his shoulder. "There's nothing to be grateful for, we just did what we thought we should do." As he spoke, he raised the wine gourd, shook it, took a sip with his head up, looked down at Bada and said, "What's more, you paid for it. If you are really grateful, you can give more when we are about to leave. Let's get some bath bars." As he spoke, he drank the wine in the wine gourd in one gulp, turned it over, poured it upside down, and there was not a drop of wine left. "Look, it's not enough to drink, ha 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 ha." Bada looked at Sorata, with the corners of his mouth upturned, and a smile appeared on his face. "The meal has been prepared a long time ago. As for bath wine, we can drink as much Sorata as you want. If it is not enough, we can restart the winery and give it to you, you brew." After speaking, he walked towards the palace first, motioning for Sorata and Kuina to follow. Sorata took a step forward, walked with Bada, put his right hand on Bada's shoulder, and patted. "That's what you said. At that time, I have to empty your wine storage in the wine cellar under Winter Island. Haha. Drink whatever you want." Seeing Bada and Sorata hooking their shoulders together, a gentle smile appeared on Leah's face. How long has it been since she was so happy? Thinking of this, she stretched out her hand, gently took Kuina's hand, and said with a light smile, "Kuina, tell me the story of your adventures at sea, okay?" After speaking, she looked at Kuina expectantly. If Sorata is her admiration, then Kuina is the object of her admiration. She is about the same age as her and is also a woman. She can follow Sorata in the sea. The most important thing is that she is so powerful. Kuina looked at Leah, with the corners of her mouth raised, showing a gentle smile, and she touched Leah's head, just like Sorata rubbing her head, with gentle movements. She likes this feeling of being appreciated and admired by other people. "Okay." As she walked forward, she said, "Although we have only been out to sea for less than a month, what we have experienced in this month is really wonderful." "Oh," advertisement stars flashed in Leah's eyes. "Quick, tell me, what's there? Have you ever seen a huge whale that can understand human speech and has steel channels in its belly?" "I'll tell you. Hearing the laughter coming from behind, and feeling the breath of hope for the new life of countless citizens around the palace, Bada turned his head to look at Sorata. His eyes couldn't help being slightly moist. All of this has appeared countless times in his dreams. He didn't expect that one day, his dream would come true. Thinking of this, he couldn't help looking at an unnamed hillside behind the palace. There is a tomb there, a tomb with no name and no stele. His beloved wife is buried in the grave. He buried his wife secretly, and he didn't even dare to erect a tombstone. It's over, it's over. His gaze seemed to pass through time, and he saw his wife again, saw her beautiful and gentle smile, saw the prosperity of the Bath Kingdom behind her wife, and saw the smiles on the faces of countless citizens. He must return Bath to the beautiful, bustling city it once was. Bring Bath back to glory, should be stronger. Thinking of this, the moisture in his eyes was gradually replaced by an unprecedented firmness. He never thought about going to the world government for revenge, which is equivalent to courting death, but the seeds of hatred in his heart, and the seeds of hatred in the hearts of tens of thousands of people in the kingdom of Bath, will one day in the future, and countless people in the world, those who have experienced the darkness of the world government, let go along with the tide and explode violently. For Bada, and the hidden seeds of hatred in the hearts of countless civilians around the palace. Sorata can feel it, but he doesn't care about it, and he doesn't have the leisure to care about it. All this is planted by the world government, and one day they will be backlashed and headed for destruction. The world is a cycle, and no one can change it. He is just an ordinary adventurer who wants to travel around the world and be the freest person in the world. Whatever you want, that's all. Chapter 52 Balance. I didn't make people, and I didn't make the world wait any longer. The whole world was suddenly turned upside down by a series of Sorata news. In this lake of the world, it was as if a meteorite had been thrown into it. The waves were choppy and lively. Several pieces of news with Sorata as the cover were spread all over the world in an instant through the World Economic News Agency. This time is not the last time to defeat the Golden Lion. For Golden Lion, the younger generation of pirates, it can be said that they don't have the slightest impression. The world is forgetful, even some forces have already forgotten the existence of this old guy, let alone civilians. But this time was different. Sorata successively beheaded CP0, a member of an extremely terrorist organization in the hearts of pirates in various countries, and later beheaded 4 Marine Elite Vice Admiral. And this guy fought with Kizaru all night, and he was safe, but Kizaru was hacked 3 times.
It can be said that in the Battle of War Island, Sorata faced Marine Buster Call and Admiral alone, plus the veteran Vice Admiral Mellison, and finally, of course, the wheel battle with 4 CP0 members was added, resulting in 4 deaths, 4 injuries, and the whole body and the horrible record of retreating.
Not many rookies know about the Vice Admiral of Mellison, but the old pirates are very clear about his strength. For the newcomers and the pirates who are on the Grand Line, the 5 Vice Admiral and Admiral Kizaru who are active in the New World and the Grand Line, they know the weight of these guys. With the addition of these terrifying combat powers, even if they face the 4 Emperor's regiment, they will have a battle. Now, he was defeated by that rookie named Silverhair, and also let this guy retreat completely.
What a terrifying existence this guy is. The whole world, whether it is old pirates or new pirates, under the bombardment of these news, has thoroughly remembered Silverhair Sorata and the windmill flag of the Silverhair pirates.
New World, Derice Rosa. A burst of crazy and arrogant laughter suddenly came from the palace on the central high ground. Foo 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 foo. Doflamingo, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, wearing a pink feather coat and sunglasses, was lying on the sofa, reading the newspaper, and Sorata kept laughing wildly.
The world is never boring. Let's mess up. He threw away the newspaper in his hand, walked to the window, looked at the bustling street under the high ground, pedestrians like ants, opened his hands, and shouted frantically, "Chaos! The tide of the times has begun to roll, let this huge wave let the waves come more violently."
Foo 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 foo. Ghost Island. Kaido looked at the newspaper in front of him, looked at the extremely dazzling title of the 5th Emperor, frowned slightly, then threw the newspaper away, grabbed the wine gourd, and drank. Goo goo. Huh. Kaido let out a breath of alcohol, and put the wine gourd on the side table with a bang. Advertisement, the 5th Emperor, want to become Emperor? Luckily, you little brat came early? Worororo, smiling, he stood up and walked outside. Boring. So boring. He was going to have some fun. He heard that some new pirates had recently entered New World and wandered around Wano-kuni. He was going to test the quality of these pirates to see if they were worthy of his wooing. YF2F. In the huge castle at the ruins of the subjugated country on Krajgan Island, a black-haired middle-aged man wearing a white shirt, black pants, and a golden cross on his chest is drinking coffee and reading a newspaper. Okay, at this moment, he paused slightly with the hand holding the coffee cup, then gently put down the coffee cup, took the newspaper in front of him with both hands, and read it seriously. When he saw the news that Sorata stabbed 4 vice admirals and then stabbed Kizaru behind him, his evil-like pupils flashed with excitement. Great swordsman, a world-class swordsman. When he saw the news about Sorata last time, he became interested in Sorata, a great swordsman who suddenly appeared. He wanted to go to Sorata to discuss, but was delayed by some things, so he didn't go. This time I saw the news of Sorata again, and it was a stronger Sorata than last time. He couldn't help it. Thinking of this, he threw away the newspaper, stood up slowly, walked to the clothes hanger at the side, picked up the burgundy patterned cloak on it, and put it on his body, picked up a black top hat with white fluff from the side, and put it on the head. Turning around, he carried a huge cross-shaped black knife on his back, and walked out of the castle quickly. The last one that made him so excited and impatient was not the red-haired Shanks, who was one of the 4 emperors before he broke his arm. But since this guy lost his arm, he couldn't find another swordsman opponent who could excite him. New World, somewhere in the sea. On an uninhabited island, the red hair pirates are having a banquet on it at this time. In the middle of the island, on a broken tree, sat a middle-aged man with only one arm. The middle-aged man has red hair, and there are 3 vertical scars on his left eye. Judging from the marks, he should be scratched. There is a shallow short stubble around his mouth. He is wearing a white shirt, a black cape, and a western sword hanging from his waist. This is the captain, Shanks, of the Red Hair Pirates, one of the New World 4 emperors, who is famous all over the world, nicknamed Red Hair. Also the youngest of the 4 emperors. While Shanks is a pirate, he is also a man full of unknowns because he has connections with 5 elders, the supreme leader of the world government. This guy can also be said to be the most free pirate in the world. If the definition of One Piece is the freest person on this sea, then it can be said that Shanks is the closest existence to that thrown up. Advertisement: this guy is also the only one among the 4 emperors who has climbed to the top of the world with only hockey, not relying on fruits. At this time, Shanks, holding the bottle in one hand, looked down at the newspaper spread in his lap. The more you look at his frown, the tighter it is. Beside him, wearing a black V-neck t-shirt, army green overalls and black marten boots, with a yellow belt tied a flintlock rifle around his waist, with a gray back and a dark blue cloak with spiral patterns hair pirates, the deputy captain, Ben Beckman, saw that the red hair was not in the right state, and asked softly, "What's wrong, Shanks?" "Fine." Shanks put away the seriousness in his eyes, turned his head to look at Beckman, and said with a chuckle, "A new pirate who has the strength to cut Marine, that monkey-like guy." Oh, a look of surprise flashed in Beckman's eyes. He drank the cigarette in his hand, reached out to take the newspaper handed over by Shanks, and read it. Seeing that his face gradually became serious, he looked at Shanks and said, "Isn't this the kid who killed the Golden Lion?" As he spoke, a look of shock flashed in his eyes. "I didn't expect the strength to reach this level. 1 admiral and 5 vice admirals, the pirates don't care about it, but if they fight alone, it's another matter. Even if Shanks met, it would be very troublesome." It's trouble, not invincibility." Shanks didn't answer Beckman, but turned to look at the sea in the distance. The balance of New World is about to be broken again. Thinking of this, he raised the wine bottle and drank a few sips, then shook his head, put these things aside, the smile returned to his face, and happily held a banquet with his subordinates. From Sorata's news, he could understand Sorata's behavior and way of doing things. At least this guy is not a vicious person, and that's enough. What he is most worried about is the kind of extremely crazy and powerful pirates. Because after these guys came to New World, they were bound to turn New World upside down because of their ambitions. That would break the balance that was finally formed between 4 emperors, Marine, and 7 warlords of the sea. Bringing the world into chaos again, this is not what he wants to see. Of course, this is not what the Marine and world government want to see. Thinking about it, if it is a pirate like Sorata who aims for adventure, no matter how bad it is, it won't be so bad. I don't know if he will be so happy to see Sorata in the future. Because Sorata's first goal in the Grand Line is Shichibukai. The goal of entering New World in the future is to become the strongest in the world. That is to say, he will definitely fight Whitebeard. Although he may not necessarily conflict with the entire Whitebeard pirate group, the change of owner of the title of strongest will definitely break the old balance if he thinks about it. I think it will be very interesting when they actually meet each other. Chapter 53 Dream East Blue, Kokoja Village, Orangery. Jien was taking the newspaper from Nami, looking at the familiar faces on it. His face was full of smiles. "Jien, this is Sorata who saved Kokoja Village and killed Arlong. Nami has only been back for a few days. When she dragged her tired body back to the village, she couldn't believe her eyes. Because the old Kokoja village, which was always laughing and laughing, is back. It took her a few days to digest the fact that the shadow over her heart and the sky over Kokoja village had completely disappeared. Next is the infinite gratitude to Sorata and Kuina. She collected all the news about Sorata and others, and this one is the latest news sent by the newspaper delivery bird today." "Okay." Jien looked at Nami and nodded, with gratitude in his eyes. "My lord, you really don't stop. Wherever it goes, it's big news." Nami looked at the photo of Sorata in the newspaper, his eyes sparkled. Without the shackles of Arlong, that dreaming heart was about to move again. But she resisted this impulse. She realized the cruelty of the sea early on. Without a group of reliable partners, it is best to bury the idea of going to sea in your heart. "Although I can't go to the Grand Line, but East Blue. She can still roam." Thinking of this, she quickly rushed into the next house, picked up her backpack, put it on her back, and rushed out of the room like a gust of wind, and ran quickly towards the pier. "Nami, where are you going?" Jien looked at Nami's back and shouted loudly. Nami turned his back to Jien, raised his right hand high, and waved. "Me, this time, I'm going to go to sea for my dream." "Dream?" Jien looked at Nami, and the smile in his eyes deepened. He didn't stop Nami from going out to sea, but shouted loudly. "Then be careful when you go out." Understood. Dreams, no one can stop those who go to sea for their dreams. Just like Zoro in Yixin Dojo in Simojiji village at this time. Ever since he saw the news about Sorata and Kuina, his heart to go to sea couldn't bear it anymore. Have you decided? Advertisement. Koshiro sat cross-legged on the steps in front of the door, looked at Zoro standing under the steps and spoke softly. Okay. Zoro nodded, eyes determined. Now that you've made your decision, let's go. Only, what? Koshiro looked at Zoro, hesitated for a moment, and said, I'm not worried about your strength, it's your terminally ill Lukai. No road race. Zoro blushed and yelled at Koshiro, I'm not a Lukai. I'm just. For a moment, he couldn't think of any words to describe his Lukai. You just didn't look the way, did you? Koshiro looked at Zoro with a smile on his face, the corners of his mouth turned up. Exactly, I'm not a road idiot. Saying that, Zoro kept nodding his head, as if he really wasn't Lukai. Koshiro looked at Zoro and didn't speak until he saw that Zoro was stiff and obviously about to burst into anger, then he looked back and looked down at the black long knife on his legs. An eagle must soar in the sky to truly become the overlord of the sky, and the same is true for people. They must go to sea to experience various battles and trials before they can truly realize their ideals. Thinking, he picked up the long knife, looked up at Zoro, and handed it over. Take it. This knife is the same as Sorata's Zonkong. It is from the hands of my teacher. It should be a gift for you to go to sea. Same as Zonkong. Zoro took the knife excitedly, couldn't help holding the handle, and pulled the knife out. Clang, the blade came out of its sheath with a crisp friction sound. People feel from the bottom of my heart that this is a good knife. There was a flash of cold light, and a knife that was exactly the same as Zonkong, similar to the famous sword Kiishui, lay in front of Zoro. Zoro put the knife in his left hand on his waist, couldn't help but reach out and stroke the blade, feeling the sharpness on it, his face flushed. He has long been envious of Kuina's Hedaoyuan and Sorata's Zonkong. Every time he wanted to borrow it for fun, these two guys always had a very unwilling face, which made him feel very upset. Now he also has a good knife. Master, what's the name of this knife? Ding, advertisement. Zoro sheathed his knife and looked at Koshiro excitedly. Your knife? How'd I know its name? Koshiro looked at Zoro, and said with a smile. Sorata's Zonkong is also his own name, you can choose it yourself. As he spoke, he pushed his glasses, picked up the newspaper next to him and read it. This is the newspaper delivered by Zoro just now, and he hasn't read it yet. Looking at his face, Jonin couldn't help but smile. No wonder this guy rushed to tell him that he was going to go to sea. It turned out that he was jealous of Sorata and Kuina's rapid rise to fame.
With the speed of Sorata's rise, Zoro is afraid that the news that Sorata is already the strongest in the world will come before he goes to sea, so he wants to go to sea as soon as possible to realize his dream.
Scrolling down, when seeing more news about Sorata, Koshiro's eyes flickered with worry, then the worry disappeared, and instead he smiled. With Sorata's invincible ability, he believes that no one in this world can hurt him unless he himself is willing to be hit. Thinking of this, he shook his head. Sorata has never been injured since he was a child, so he must be afraid of pain. Even if he thinks about it, no one will hit him. It's just that the three of Ahua are suffering, and their strength is a little weak. Now they are facing the world's largest organization, world government. It must be very distressing to think about it. How did he know that the three of Ahua are no longer what they used to be? The laughter came out of Yixin Dojo, and spread far away, as if his mood at this time was not limited to this dojo, this small town, this small island, but went towards the boundless sea. Ha 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 ha. The more he hit Kuina, the more he made Kuina stronger and more extreme. Now seeing Kuina breaking through the boundaries of male and female strength and being promoted to the rank of great swordsman, he is sincerely happy for Kuina. In my heart, I am more satisfied with the decision to save Sorata and bring Kaido to the field. What's it called? But the appearance of Sorata gradually changed his mind, just like no one can stop a person with a dream from going out to sea, and no one can stop a person from pursuing the obsession in his heart. He couldn't help shaking his head, and then his eyes lit up, thinking of the agreement with Sorata. Thinking of this, he raised his knife and shouted loudly, "Then call you, crack the sea." Zoro was not angry when Koshiro slapped him, the smile on his face remained the same. He looked at the long knife in his hand, looked left, touched the right, and liked it very much. As a father, no one loves Kuina more than him. When he saw the news of Kuina, he paused his hand slightly, stretched out his hand and pushed the frame of the mirror, looked down and back and forth on the newspaper several times, and then the corners of his mouth turned up, showing a smile. For this daughter who has always wanted to be strong, what he planned from the beginning was to let her live her life peacefully and quietly like a normal person. In that sea full of miracles, any miracle can happen, let alone something like giving a person power. If it weren't for the appearance of Sorata, he didn't even know what Kuina would develop into in the end. The strongest swordsman in the world must be matched with the strongest sword in the world. Since Sorata's sword is called Zonkong, then his sword. He stroked his chin and thought for a while, and named him Guikai Online, Ghost Saber, Ashura, Qinglong, White Tiger. Too vulgar. Chapter 54. 5 Elders' Head, hurts so much. Boom, Holy Land, Marijoy. In a castle, wearing a dark blue suit, one of the 5 elders with long straight white hair and a long beard, a person whose name is unknown, slapped the newspaper in his hand on the coffee table in front of him. Damn Morgans actually said that the matter of the Ore Island was just a sneak shot of the silver-haired gang, and the news was released unintentionally. This obviously lied to the ghosts, which made them angry. But they can't do anything about that guy Morgans. Both the world government and the Marine need that guy. If that guy hadn't mastered the newspaper delivery bird, always maintained the fruit ability, and often moved the headquarters, they would have wiped out that guy long ago and replaced him. After speaking, he got up, frowned, and asked Sengoku, who was standing outside the coffee table, wearing a Marine Marshal's coat. Sengoku, is this the answer you Marine gave us? Why did the news about Ore Island appear in the hands of that fellow Morgans? Sengoku bent down to pick up the newspaper on the coffee table and read it. He received the order from the Holy Land early in the morning, and rushed over in a hurry. Looking at the news in the newspaper, he was slightly taken aback. I didn't expect that there would be a reporter from the World Economic News Agency on the Ore Island at that time. This time the Buster Call was launched in secret. It is impossible for the Marine and world government to leak the secret. So, he looked at the newspaper, a gleam flashed in his eyes. Is there anything you want to say, Sengoku? Asked another of the 5 elders, in a dark green suit, balding, with a figure-splayed beard, and a moderate birthmark on his forehead. Sengoku finished reading the newspaper, put it back gently, looked up at the bald 5 elders, and slowly said, "This operation is a secret operation, so this reporter can only follow the silver-haired gang." As he spoke, he pushed the frame. Silverhair should have cooperated with the Economic News Agency from the very beginning and offered to provide shooting, which is why the reporter took so many photos. From the perspective of some photos, it can also be seen that the reporter should have taken the photo not far from Silverhair. After speaking, he bent down to open the newspaper and pointed to some photos in it. Such close-up shooting, if there is no Silverhair's permission, no one should be able to shoot it. 5 elders looked at the newspaper at the same time and nodded. Put aside the newspapers beforehand. A man in a white robe, with a bald head and glasses, the only one among the 5 elders who didn't wear a suit and had a beard, holding a samurai sword in his hand. He stared at Sengoku quietly, his pupils under the frame were indifferent, and his brows were slightly furrowed. There's one thing that bothers me. Everyone turned to look at the bald 5 elders holding swords. What's up? Why, advertisement with a bald head, staring at Sengoku, an invisible momentum rose. Why did all the people from CP0 and CP organization who went there this time die in battle, but you Marine only injured a few people, and none of them died? Sengoku, how do you explain this? After talking about what he thought of, he continued, and the base chief of the G10 branch, Mellison, why did he help Buzz Bada transport slaves belonging to the world government? Sengoku looked at the bald head and didn't show any timidity in the face of 5 elders. Come yet? From the moment he received Kizaru's report, he knew that he would be held accountable by the 5 elders, because none of their Marines died in this Buster Call. Compared to the people in the CP organization, that's too obvious. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell at a glance that Silverhair showed mercy when facing their Marine. If this is not handled properly, Marine's position in the world government's heart may be shaken. And there was also Marine, Mellison, who helped Buzz Bada, who could be said to be an enemy at the time. But even so, his face was calm, and his tone was even calmer. He raised his head and said, Buster Call arrived after the defeat of the CP organization. As for the death of all members of CP0, I can only express my deep regret. As for Marine, I don't know about that, but judging from Silverhair's past actions. He paused, although he didn't want to admit it, but he already had the answer in his heart. He shrugged and said helplessly, that's the guy with the silver hair. He's a real man who doesn't kill indiscriminately.
Justice. Hearing this, the 5 elders were taken aback at the same time, and then an angry look appeared on their faces.
Boom. Wearing a black suit, with white curly hair, a fluffy white beard, a flat hat, one of the 5 elders with a scar on the left cheek. Let's call him the bearded 5 elders. The bearded 5 elders held a spiral-shaped scepter in both hands and slammed on the floor. Stop kidding, Sengoku, if this guy is a righteous man, what are we in your Marine?
Also, Sengoku, don't forget your own identity. Your Marine is just the face of the world government, and CP0 is the face. Although they believe Sengoku's words in their hearts, they still have to show that they are the party of justice.
He glared at Sengoku, then said, don't you think it's funny to call a pirate a righteous man, Sengoku? Sengoku didn't answer the bearded 5 elders' question. Some things just need to be known by both parties, there is no need to raise an argument, it will not benefit anyone. All right. Wearing a dark red suit, no bow tie, blonde hair, blonde beard, and a scar on his chest, the golden-haired 5 elders asked. Since it has happened and been sent to the whole world by the hateful Morgans, what is it? What do you Marine plan to do next? What about the silver-haired gang? And your Marine's vice admiral named Mellison? Sengoku turned to look at the golden retriever 5 elders. Marizen resigned after returning to the G10 branch. Have you resigned? Advertisement golden retriever 5 elders nodded. For those who don't obey the orders of the world government, it's good to resign. They don't care about an old vice admiral at all, they want to show Sengoku and Marine the attitude of their world government. That is, the will and orders of the world government must be carried out. The silver-haired guys. Sengoku hesitated, and said with a headache, I don't know how to deal with it either. You should know how difficult this guy is, he shrugged when he finished. The 5 elders all fell silent. They really couldn't think of how to deal with the silver hair, otherwise they wouldn't have seen the news and quickly called Sengoku. They didn't really care much about the defeat of Bath Kingdom and Ore Island. I don't know how many countries have been destroyed in their lifetime, and they don't care about such things at all. As for the Ore Island, it's just a matter of looking for another one when it's gone. What happened to Bath 3 years ago was actually just a casual sentence from them. 5 elders looked at the picture of Sorata on the news in front of him and got a headache. Long-term pursuit? Sengoku couldn't help it, he could only completely mess it up. He shrugged and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. You guys are very clear about this guy's ability. Don't talk about your marines, you can't even deal with a pirate who has just set sail for less than a month. And what to use to stabilize the balance of the sea.
What they care about at this time is that this guy with silver hair actually killed all the members of CP0, which seriously provoked the majesty of the world government.
Okay, that's it. You marines discuss the reward for the silver-haired gang as soon as possible, and release it as soon as possible. Sometimes it is like this, the people at the top of the power don't care about the process of the people below. As long as the results come true, they don't care about the demise of a small country, let alone the citizens of this small country. If the headquarters in New World lack Garp, the legendary marine, and need the assistance of 2 admirals, who will protect the Holy Land? Unable to think of an answer, they could only look at Sengoku. No way, 5 elders can only increase the bounty offered by the silver-haired group. Maybe there will be a desperate bounty hunter who is lucky enough to take the silver-haired head. At that time, winning and losing are out of their control. The 5 elders shook their heads simultaneously.
In order to maintain the balance of the ocean, neither the world government nor the marine can devote all their energy to one person or a group of forces. In that case, the pirates will only be united.
It's like New World's 4 emperors, they can't help it either. And you have to plan for a long-term hunt, because an admiral is no threat to this guy. As for vice admiral, he is going to die. Sorry, 5 adults, our marine really can't deal with that guy at this stage, unless we call Garp and the 2 admirals, there is still a chance.
Chapter 55 Reputation. Sengoku stood under the steps of the castle, and couldn't help turning his head to look at the castle behind him, with a hint of self-mockery in his eyes.
The evil of the world government actually wants a pirate to do justice. For him and Marine. What an irony, isn't the fact that the silver-haired guy didn't kill Marine alone an extreme mockery of Marine? He shook his head, but without an answer, he turned his head and walked towards the lifting platform in the distance. Still think about it, the silver-haired gang's reward. Since Morgan's called Silverhair the 5th Emperor of the Sea, let him be the 5th Emperor and fight the monsters of the New World. Sometimes fame is also a burden. Just like the 4 emperors, countless pirates try to have their heads removed every year so they can sit in that position. Pirates and pirates, dogs eat dogs, this is also a function of the reputation brought by the reward order. The efficiency of Marine and the world government is still very fast, since they plan to increase the bounty for the silver-haired gang and make Sorata completely famous so that pirates and bounty hunters can trouble him, they have improved unprecedentedly this time. Silver-haired bounty. World Economic News Agency, Office of the President. Morgans looked at the facts from Marine and the silver-haired bounty on it, his face flushed.
Although he had known for a long time that Sorata's reward amount this time would definitely increase, he would never have imagined that Marine and the world government would pay so much attention to silver hair and increase it so much.
After thinking about it, I can actually understand it. This bounty should be the most correct decision made by Marine and the world government. He took the reward order on the desktop, walked out of the office quickly, and shouted to the busy men outside. Boys, work overtime to print these reward orders. I want their reward orders to be printed out as soon as possible. The speed spreads all over the world. With the blessing of the reward order this time, I want Silverhair to completely ascend to the 5th Emperor's seat. The subordinates looked at the excited president. Although their eyes were bloodshot and tired, their hearts were full of excitement. For journalists, there is nothing to do, and the excitement brought by big news is even stronger. They worked overtime just now to print and release the news of the Silverhair Warbuster call. Judging by the excitement of the president, it must be another news that shocked the world. That's amazing. Silver-haired Sorata, since going to sea, it has been full of big news. Morgans looked at the busy subordinates, put away the excited expression on his face, thought for a while, and said to his trusted subordinates, after printing these newspapers and reward orders, we have to relocate the headquarters. This time world government, although he didn't make trouble, he should be disgusted enough. These guys have been trying to find him, bribe him, and even kill him. Advertisement to understanding, the subordinate replied calmly. Having been with Morgans for so long, he certainly knows the situation of the president. The news this time really disgusted the world government. After a while, countless newspaper delivery birds flew out of the newspaper office together, carrying a new reward order from the silver-haired gang on their backs, and sent them to the whole world. Bass Island, in an underground space under Winter Island. Sorata and others are lying comfortably in a hot spring bath.
It was the second day since they had returned to Bath from Ore Island.
At this time, Sorata was leaning against the edge of the hot spring pool, looking up at the newspaper in her hand. The 5th Emperor. This guy Morgans is really boring, can't he think of something new? For example, the Emperor of Space, the Sword God, the Sword Master, what a lot of hockey. The 5th Emperor, from this point of view, is following the 4 emperors. Not hockey at all. Thinking of this, he shook his head, threw the newspaper by the pool, took the wine gourd by the pool, and took a sip with his head raised. His alcohol addiction is getting bigger and bigger now. That's right, with such a strong body, drinking is like drinking water, and he doesn't like drinks, so he usually only drinks. Besides, he really likes the slightly dizzy and excited feeling after drinking. Well, I feel weak all over, I really want to sleep. At this moment, Ahua's voice came from the side. The injuries on the three of Ahua's bodies have already stuttered under Indigo's superb medical skills, so it's okay to soak in hot springs or something. Yeah, I didn't expect devil fruit to have such a serious side effect, and I don't even have the strength to take a bath. Beside Awa, Aluo's head and hands were lying limply by the pool, his lower body and chest completely soaked in the hot spring. Calical. On the other side of the pool, Indigo, who was leaning against the pool, looked at Aluo and Awa lying on the side of the pool like two salted fish, chuckled lightly, and said, as long as you don't put more than 2/3 of your body will be fine if you soak it in water. Is there still such a saying? Advertisement. Ahua and Aluo Chi-Chi turned their heads to stare at Indigo. After eating devil fruit, they hadn't taken a bath yet, and it was the first time they knew about demon fruit power, and they couldn't even take a full bath. Ha ha ha, two landlubbers, such a wonderful hot spring, it seems that I can only enjoy it. At this moment, Adao's head popped out of the water in front of them. Adao stood up straight and laughed at Aluo and Awa. You be asterisk 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 d. Awa and Aluo frowned at the same time, looking at Adao with a proud face. These two guys who usually dislike each other joined hands this time, stood up quickly, and rushed over to make a mess with Adao. Besides Sorata, Bada, who was sitting cross-legged in the water, looked at the three people playing with each other in the pool, and heard Leah's laughter from another hot spring pool separated by a wall. The corners of his mouth could not help but smile. Feeling the warmth from under his body, even though it had been 2 days, all of this still made him feel like he was in a dream. Your thanks, we have received, badass. Bada looked at Ahua, smiled and said, there is no king in this bathhouse. I am just representing a father, representing tens of thousands of people in the kingdom of Bath, and sincerely say to you. How long has it been since he took such a bath? Bada raised his head, looked at Sorata, and saw that everyone in the pool smiled at him, and he also grinned and laughed loudly. Thanks to fate, Sorata chose the island for the first time and chose the route of Bath. He sincerely thanked fate. Sorata didn't go to help Bada this time, he lifted the wine gourd, raised his head and took a big sip. Awa let go of Adao's head, took off his glasses, wiped the water stains on the lenses, put them back on, and looked at Bada with surprise in his eyes. Thinking of this, he slowly stood up and walked ashore. Ha ha ha. All of this was brought about by the man beside him. Hey, you are not the bounty hunter Bada, but the real king of Bath. Turning around and looking in the direction of the pool, he knelt down slowly. Seeing Bada's movements, Awa-san immediately stopped making trouble. Thank you for sending it to Bass, saving him, and saving them from the heroes of Bass. Laughter passed through the thick soil layer above, floating in the sky over Winter Island, and lingered for a long time. He put his hands on the ground, bent over, touched his forehead to the ground, and said loudly, thank you. Then he put down the wine gourd, turned his head to Bada, and laughed out loud. Chapter 56 Farewell. The next morning, Chundao Wharf is crowded with people. At this time, everyone on Base Island was crowded on the banks on both sides of the canal, and further away, on the roofs and mountains. They are all here to rescue their heroes, the silver-haired gang. Although there were many people, it was unusually quiet. They just looked closely at the Liberty, at the silver-haired gang on the Liberty, with infinite gratitude in their eyes. Beside the Liberty ship, Bada's little brothers. No, it should be the King's Guard of the Bath Kingdom at this time, with a serious face, constantly carrying jars of bath wine to the Liberty. In their hearts, they are full of endless gratitude to the heroes of Bath, all members of the Silver Hair Pirates. The three of Awa stood by the side of the boat, looked at the younger brothers who were still carrying the wine jars up, and quickly shouted, okay, if you move up, the food won't hold anymore. Don't worry, three big brothers, we have calculated the weight of Liberty. A younger brother smiled softly at the three of Ahua, passed them quickly, handed the wine jar to a younger brother in the cabin, turned around and went to carry other things. In addition to wine, there are other things on the pier. In addition to the usual food, there is also a special gift. Candies and dolls from the hundreds of children in the cellar. All packed in a small cardboard box. The small cardboard box is now in Kuina's arms. Since receiving this gift, Kuina has never stopped smiling, she likes this gift so much. There is no never-ending banquet in the world, Bada, send it here. Beside the boat, Sorata turned to look at Bada and Leah who were following him. Can't you stay a few more days? Leah was wearing a princess dress, standing elegantly beside Bada, holding Kuina's hand, with a look of reluctance on her face. I miss you all. Kuina turned her head to stare at Leah's face and said softly, you have your life, but our life is in the boundless sea. As she spoke, she looked through Leah and looked at the hundreds of children on the shore. You are a princess, the princess of a country, take good care of those lovely children. Although the children's gifts are not very precious, these things are the most precious gifts they can give at this time. Therefore, this heart is so precious and heavy. She sincerely hopes that they can be safe, happy and grow up happily. Certainly. Leah followed Kuina's gaze and looked at the children with firm eyes. Bada glanced at Leah and Kuina, the corners of his mouth turned up and he smiled. Although Leah has experienced misfortune, she still has a bright heart. He believes that she will be a good princess. Thinking of this, he turned to look at Sorata and said, "Boss." Sorata frowned slightly. "Your citizens are all around you. How can you scream?" Advertisement saying this, he shrugged. Bada turned his head and glanced at the citizens on the shore and in the distance, with a smile in his eyes, then turned his head and said to Sorata, "Although you don't like it, I still want to call you boss. I'm not alone the voice of the heart, but the common voice of the entire kingdom of Bath at this time, more than 20,000 citizens. All the slaves rescued from War Island joined the kingdom of Bath, so the population of the kingdom of Bath at this time was larger than it used to be. There is just one bad thing, that is, there are more men than women. It seems that this place will become the island of bachelors in the future. Otherwise, just look outside." Sorata looked at Bada, looked at the countless Bath citizens on the shore, looked upwards, and looked at a flag with a windmill pattern floating on the top of the highest palace. "I hope the windmill can bring good luck to this troubled country." Since he agreed to Bada at the beginning, and he wanted to hang up, then let him do it. Thinking about it, his strength should be enough to protect the kingdom of Bath. Besides, Bada's strength is also very strong. When I sparred with this guy yesterday, I realized that this guy not only has Conqueror's Hockey, Armament Hockey is not weak, but also has Observation Hockey, who is born with special abilities. This can also explain why this guy believes him so much. Bada has experienced so much pain, but he will not easily trust a pirate, just like his younger brothers, who did not believe in Sorata from the beginning, and even had hatred for him. "Boss." Just as Bada was about to say something, he was interrupted by Sorata reaching out his hand. "Okay, it's fine if you scream, but I'm going to be angry." "Okay." Bada shrugged, took out 2 record pointers from his pocket, and handed them to Sorata. "Sorata, this is the permanent pointer of Drum Kingdom and Alabasta you want." "Thanks." Sorata reached out to take it, and looked at it curiously. Unlike the general record pointer, the permanent record pointer is larger, so it cannot be worn on the hand, but is embedded in a hollow wooden strip. He lost interest after looking at it, turned his head, and shouted to Aluo who was standing by the boat. "Aluo." "Okay. Then." Aluo looked at the permanent pointer thrown by Sorata, followed in a hurry, looked down at Sorata, and complained loudly. "Couldn't you be more careful? This thing is not so drop resistant." "Didn't I trust you?" Sorata looked at Aluo and laughed. Arlo couldn't help but rolled his eyes at Sorata's perfunctory, and then carefully put away the permanent record pointer. Although they don't know why Sorata went to the island where these 2 kingdoms are located, they unreservedly support Sorata's decision. Sorata turned her head, looked at Bada's younger brothers who were standing behind Bada after carrying the things, and a smile flashed in her eyes. Then he looked at Bada with a smile and said, "You little brothers, it seems that you are very suitable for the current role." "Are they?" Advertisement. Bada laughed lightly, "It's just pretending, in private." "Boss, no, your majesty." When the younger brothers heard Bada's voice, they all shouted together. "Ha ha ha. You guys are still so interesting. Okay, we should go too." Sorata stopped laughing, reached out and patted Bada's shoulder. "If you need anything, you can call me. It should be fine. The world government has its eyes on you, but it has no time to take care of me, a little king." Bada looked at Sorata and chuckled lightly. "Well, that's right." Sorata withdrew her hand, turned and jumped onto the boat, and shouted at the 3 Ahua on the deck. "Brothers, let's go." "It is good." The 3 of Ahua replied loudly, and hurriedly got busy. "Disembark." Kuina, looking at Leah, reached out and rubbed her head. "Take care of yourself." After a while, the sails of the Liberty were full, and it slowly sailed out of the pier, along the canal, facing the rising sun, and heading towards the sea. "What kind of enjoyment is that? Thanks. Is this what you want?" "Partners of justice. It's too exaggerated. The indescribable excitement in my heart, this scene of being appreciated by thousands of people, I think it will be engraved in their hearts, and they will never forget it for a lifetime." He does not know. This kind of emotion is that he, an outsider, can tremble with excitement when he sees it, let alone the person involved. The people of Bath on both sides of the strait, looking at the Liberty and several figures on board the Liberty, slowly knelt down one by one. After speaking, he jumped into the boat and stood beside Sorata. Their voices were soft at first, then joined together, and finally they were deafening, resounding throughout the island. When the 3 of Ahua and Indigo heard the sound, they ran over quickly and stood beside Sorata, watching this extremely shocking scene. Firebird held up the camera, glanced at Sorata standing beside the Liberty ship, and thought of what he said. That should be an unprecedented spiritual enjoyment. However, he could feel it from the smile on Sorata's face. On a small boat behind the Liberty, Firebird and several of his assistants held up their cameras with flushed faces, and recorded this extremely shocking scene. Chapter 57. It wasn't until Liberty disappeared under the sea level in the distance that after a long time, the people on the shore gradually looked back and turned to look at Bada. "Father." Leah turned around, looked up at Bada, and reached out to grab his arm. "It's time to go back, the country and its citizens are still waiting for us." "Okay." Bada turned his head, glanced at Leah, then turned around and shouted to the younger brothers behind and the citizens on the shore. "Go back, rebuild your homeland, rebuild Bath, we want the future of Bath to be worthy of the banner given to us by Silver Hair." "Yes, my lord." The little brothers and the citizens, looking at Bada and their king, raised their hands together and roared loudly. The sound was firmer than ever. Liberty, helm room. With a creak, the wooden door of the wheelhouse was pushed open by Arlo. With a stack of papers in his hand, he walked excitedly to the sofa in the wheelhouse. Seeing the figure standing in front of him, Awa raised his head and shouted loudly. You are not standing guard outside, what are you doing running in? Get out of the way, and block my sight. At this time, everyone on the ship gathered in the wheelhouse, and they were all lying on the sofa, watching with relish. The picture projected in the eyes of the giant phone bug behind him on the white cloth on the opposite wall. Sorata asked Morgans for this screen phone bug, and he also asked for other phone bugs for easy contact. As for the phone bug, of course it is to kill the boredom during the journey. Although there are some old news, and some singing and dancing videos such as concerts, but for everyone who has never seen this thing, it is very amazing and very new. Speaking of which, it is really amazing to show the phone bug, and it can actually tune the channels like a TV. Except that there are fewer programs, it is exactly the same as the TV in his previous life. What's the matter, Arlo? Sensing Aluo's emotions, Sorata withdrew her gaze from staring at the white cloth opposite, and turned to look at Aluo. Snapped, Arlo bent down and slapped the paper in his hand on the coffee table in front of the sofa. Looking up at Sorata, our new bounty. Oh, hearing that it was a reward order, everyone on the sofa turned their eyes to the coffee table. Aluo didn't hold back, picked up the reward orders, spread them on the coffee table one by one, and talked while laying. The captain of the Silver Hair Pirates, Silver Hair Sorata, offers a reward of 1.5 billion berry. How many? Adao stopped smoking, and looked at Aluo with shock in his eyes. 1.5 billion. What's the fuss about this? This is Sorata, I think 1.5 billion is too little. Advertisement, Aluo replied, and despised Adao. He completely forgot that when he saw Sorata's 500 million reward order for the first time, he was the one who was the most shocked. Adao pursed her lips, looked away, and turned to look at Awa. When he saw Ahua's calm expression, he quickly turned his head and took a deep breath of the cigarette. It turned out that he was the only one shocked. Yes, this is Sorata. 1.5 billion, trivial. Thinking of this, his smoking movements became smoother, and his whole body relaxed, as if his spirit had suddenly sublimated. Nothing will shock him again. Aluo continued, spreading out the next reward order. Silver Hair Pirates, Combatants, Blue Hair Kuina, reward, 250 million berry. Ahua's body trembled, and Adao stopped smoking again. He turned his head and looked at each other, then turned away together. It's okay, isn't it just 250 million? For Kuina, it's nothing. Kuina did not increase much. After the town of Rog, her bounty rose to 70 million, the same as the first time for Sorata. Although the increase is not as exaggerated as Sorata, it will shock the sea if you think about it. After all, Kuina is 1 year younger than Sorata. The 16-year-old great swordsman is still the one who has had an inseparable fight with the Marine Elite Vice Admiral. Although the radish that restores physical strength is helping, it cannot erase the fact that Kuina is already a strong person. 250 million? Kuina looked at his reward order on the coffee table, nodded his head, and a smile appeared in his eyes. She didn't really care about the reward order, but this kind of high reward reflected the Marine and world government's recognition of her strength from the side. This kind of recognition will inevitably make people feel happy. Aluo glanced at Kuina, quickly looked away, continued to offer a reward, looked up at Indigo and smiled. This time it's Dr. Indigo. Oh, is there any more for me? Indigo was taken aback, and quickly sat up straight, looking at the reward order in Arlo's hand. Aluo moved his hand away from the reward order, and showed the whole picture of the reward order. Silver-haired pirates, ship doctor, Dr. Indigo, reward, 20 million berry. Calcalcal. Indigo looked at the reward order on the coffee table, chuckled, then turned to look at Sorata. Captain, I didn't get a reward on the Golden Lion ship, and I didn't expect to follow you. It's only been a few days before I was offered a reward. Gone. He grinned at the corner of his mouth and laughed loudly. Calical, you have to protect me from now on. When he first boarded the boat, he didn't dare to joke with Sorata, but after so many days of getting along, he has already integrated into the silver-haired group very well. Don't worry, with me here, no one can hurt any of you. Advertisement, ha ha ha. Sorata picked up the teacup on the coffee table, handed it to her mouth, took a sip, and then raised her head to signal for Arlo to continue. Since Indigo, who is equivalent to a person who did not participate in the war, has a reward, then the three of Aluo must also have it. I think this is the reason for Aluo's excitement. What's next is the main event. Arlo's eyes showed excitement. Awa and Adao also sat up straight. For those who had already prepared, being offered a reward was something they had been looking forward to for a long time. If there is a reward, it proves that they are no longer nameless chickens in the sea. Didn't make people wait for a long time. Aluo spread out the reward and said directly. The silver-haired pirates, Momotaro, offer a reward of 30 million berry. What? Only offered a reward of 30 million, Momotaro, that is, Adao. Their real names certainly do not start with the word A. Adao is just a name for those who have been close to them since childhood. Adao looked at the reward order and waved his hands with an indifferent attitude, but from the upturned corner of his mouth, it could be seen that his mood at the moment was not as simple as it appeared on the surface. Fart. Awa gave Adao a contemptuous look, then turned to look at Aluo, his eyes full of expectation. As he said that, he turned his head to look at Aluo, probably looking at the last reward order in Aluo's hand. His eyes shone with gold. But just as his butt left the sofa, he was pushed back by Ahua. Why is your reward so much higher than mine? Quickly, what about mine? How much is mine?
Aluo looked at Adao's surprised look, with a smug expression on his face. He continued to smile. You don't even think about how many people I killed on the battlefield, but you.
Aluo picked up the last reward order in his hand, unfolded it, looked down, and suddenly froze in place, as if he saw something incredible. Are you guys trying to make gestures? Adao stopped smoking for the third time. He looked up at Aluo, and spoke loudly. Okay. Ha ha ha. Of course it's because my strength is higher than yours. He looked at Adao, but did not continue. Your silver-haired pirates, Lotus, offer a reward of 50 million berry. Adao threw the cigarette in his hand into the ashtray on the coffee table, and wanted to stand up and challenge Aluo to a duel. In the past, Adao was the mediator of the three of them, but now it is Awa. Awa patted Adao on the shoulder and said with a smile. Okay, isn't it 20 million, next time you will definitely surpass him. Chapter 58 The Crisis Brought by Radishes, What's Wrong? Everyone looked at Aluo with doubts in their eyes. The remaining one belongs to Awa. No matter how tall it is, it shouldn't be as high as Aluo's shocked height. Awa stared at Aluo's hand, stood up eagerly, grabbed the reward order from Aluo's hand, and looked at it. Similarly, Awa also froze in place, and his body gradually began to tremble. What's the matter, tell me? Aluo recovered, turned around, bent down, and lay on the ground, his whole body darkened, and he couldn't stop muttering. Why? Adao stood up, stretched out her hand to snatch the reward order from Awa, fixed her eyes on it, then raised her head and stared at Awa. I couldn't believe it. He paused for a moment, and then shouted loudly. You be asterisk D. Why are you offering such a high reward? Ha 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 ha. Awa couldn't bear it anymore, his whole body was shaking with excitement, he stretched out his fat belly, and glanced at Adao contemptuously. Why, of course it's based on strength. You guy, your strength isn't it? Adao threw the reward order on the coffee table, and rushed towards Awa. Then let me see what strength you have to make your reward so high. Hearing the movement behind him, Aluo also turned around, with melancholy eyes, staring at Awa angrily, and rushed towards Awa. Awa raised his head and squinted at Adao and Aluo. Jealousy, naked jealousy. Then put your head in your hands and quickly squat down on the ground. Don't slap your face. Just when these three guys were making a fuss, Sorata, Kuina, and Indigo leaned their heads forward at the same time, and looked at Ahua's reward order on the coffee table, wanting to see what shocked these three guys so much. I saw that the reward order read impressively, Silver Hair Pirates, Chef, Wallace Hanajiro, Reward. 5 followed by a string of zeros. Counting again, it turned out to be the same as Sorata's second reward. So tall? The three of Sorata looked at each other, and then all looked at Awa. Is it because the radish dishes made by Ahua fruit are too pervert? At that time, there were so many marines standing on the shore, and the ghost spider also witnessed the magic of radishes in a fight with Kuina. Both marines and the world government paid unprecedented attention to this kind of thing that seriously affects the battle situation. That's why I offered such a high reward to Awa, and specially wrote under the reward order, life or death, in big characters. It is specially marked in large characters, not the small characters on the general reward order, and it is obvious at a glance that it is deliberately targeted. You must know that Sorata's reward order did not specifically write like this. It seems that Awa has already been on the must-kill list of the world government. 2. Advertisement. Since the world government knows about such things that affect the balance, there is no reason not to target them. Although they didn't see Sorata, the top powerhouse, eating radishes to restore his strength, but this does not affect the status of Ahua's ability in their hearts. You must know that the fruit ability can be developed. Although the current radish may not be useful to the top combat power, but what about in the future? No one can guarantee. If I really let Ahua develop to the top and make a radish that can restore the physical strength of the top powerhouse, it will not be heaven-defying. When I think of a top powerhouse like Sorata, carrying a basket of radishes that can restore physical strength, descending from the sky to naval headquarters, or a holy place, whether it is Sengoku or 5 elders, there is a chilling feeling. With the ability of this guy Sorata, coupled with unlimited physical strength, who else in this world can stop his footsteps? That's why there's this one, the appearance of a reward order that is seriously inconsistent with Ahua's strength. Sorata withdrew her head, leaned back on the sofa, picked up the teacup and took a sip, then turned to look at Kuina, stretched out her hand and rubbed her head. A smile flashed in her eyes. Fine. When Ahua ate the rabbit fruit and made the radish dish that can quickly restore his physical strength, he had already expected such a day. Although Ahua's current radish cooking has little effect on a strong man with top physical fitness like him, but with Ahua's strength, and the improvement of his cognition and development of fruits, it is obvious that in the end, it can make a strong man like him recover his physical strength. Such a pervert ability, if he is the world government, he will make such a capable person disappear as soon as possible, and find this fruit, and own it. Because this is not simply to enhance the strength of a certain person, but to enhance the strength of the entire team and the entire force. Think about it, if Marine Admiral has a radish that can restore stamina, would 4 emperors still matter? Consumed all 4 emperors. Okay. Kuina narrowed her eyes and rubbed her head against Sorata's hand like a kitten. Since Sorata said it was fine, it must be fine. Sorata has never let her down since she was a child, they have been disappointed. Calical, Indigo laughed, retracted the shock in his eyes, turned to look at Sorata and said with a smile. Captain, we may be in trouble now. Although surprised, there was no worry in his eyes. For Sorata's strength, he is now more confident than Golden Lion. It's a little troublesome. Sorata put down the teacup, touched her chin with her hand, thought for a while, then raised her head, looked at the three of Ahua, and shouted. Okay, stop making trouble. Oh. Hearing Sorata's shout, Dao let go of the hand that was pinching Ahua's neck, stood up, stretched out his hand to tidy up his slightly messy hair, then took out a cigarette from his trouser pocket, smoked it, and looked lonely afterwards. On the other hand, Aluo quietly let go of the hand holding Ahua's stomach, stood quietly aside, and kept combing the killer hairstyle on his head. The head can be broken, the blood can flow, and the shape of the hair cannot be messed up. Even when this guy is fighting, the first thing to protect is the shape of the head. Aluo Ahua stepped aside, revealing Ahua inside, only to see that the clothes on Ahua's upper body were completely scrapped and turned into strips. Looking through the strips of cloth, one can clearly see the blood-red, centipede-like scratches on Ahua's exposed stomach, which covered his entire stomach. Those who didn't know thought they were scratched by a woman. Sorata stared at Ahua's stomach, was taken aback for a moment, then couldn't help but glanced at Aluo, with a strange flash in his eyes. He didn't expect that this guy usually looks cool, but he likes to use his claws in fights. Advertisement. If it weren't for the emotional excitement today, maybe he didn't know it yet. You two guys. Awa stood up straight, touched his neck, touched the scratches on his stomach, and then stared at Dao and the two angrily. It's 2 against 1, come on, go on, I'll let you see today 5 the strength of billions. As he said that, he leaned forward, and wanted to rush up to fight Dao and the two of them. Retarded. The defeated general. Dao and Aluo Chichi glanced at Awa contemptuously, turned their heads to stare at Sorata, and ignored them. What are you saying? Ava became even more angry. All right. At this moment, Kuina raised her head and glanced at Dao and Aluo, then turned her head to stare at Awa calmly. Do you want to fight me if you don't stop? Ahua's body trembled, and the anger disappeared instantly. Fighting with Kuina, isn't that a joke? He glanced at Kuina cautiously, then turned his head to look at Aluo and Dao. I will give Kuina and Sorata a face today and let you go temporarily. Aluo and Dao didn't say a word, since even Kuina had spoken, they didn't dare to provoke Awa anymore. On this ship, they respect the captain Sorata, but they are not afraid at all. Since they grew up together, the way they get along with each other has always been the way of friends. But for the shadow in their hearts since childhood, the big devil Kuina, they are really afraid from the bottom of their hearts. So in normal times, for some small things, what Sorata said may not be effective, but for Kuina, it must be implemented immediately. Sorata looked at the three people who became quiet, put down the teacup gently, a smile flashed in his eyes. Due to unexpected circumstances, we may have to find a place to raise your strength. Ahua and Aluo are fine, but Ahua, you can't stay by my side all the time, right? The world government values you so much, they can't do anything to me, but they can assassinate you. Hearing this, the faces of the three of Ahua suddenly became serious. For Ahua's sudden reward, they certainly knew what was going on. Most of the radishes on the boat were eaten by them. Could they not know the horror of this thing? Where are you going? Dao pushed the mirror frame, took a deep drag on the cigarette, and stared at Sorata seriously. Where to go? You will know when you arrive, let's go now. Oh, Sorata stood up, walked out of the room slowly, and finally stood on the bow of the ship. Without a pointer, the only way he could use was to fly over. They have the permanent pointer of the Drum Kingdom, and the direction is a little to the left, so they should be able to reach the ancient island. In the first half of the Grand Line, that was the only place he could think of. No one would have imagined that they would suddenly change course and go to that island. Chapter 59 Perfect Miss at sea level not far behind the Liberty. A small sailboat was following closely. Boss, it's not good. Boom, the door of the cabin was kicked open by a reporter with a telescope and a camera on his back. Firebird was lying on the sofa, looking like a big guy. Although this guy is submissive in front of Sorata, he is very popular in their news agency at this time. He unhurriedly put down the cigar in his hand, and looked up at the reporter who hurried in, who could also be said to be his younger brother. This reporter and 2 other reporters, a total of 3 people, were sent by Morgans to assist him to shoot the silver-haired gang. What's the matter? You look flustered, you can't do big things in this state. I remember when I filmed the silver-haired brother versus Marine Admiral Kizaru, but I didn't even bat an eye. As he spoke, he shook his head at the reporter, as if the senior was teaching the younger generation. Brother taught me that. The younger brother nodded and bowed back, slowly straightening out his breath. Tell me, what's the matter? Firebird lifted the cigar, took a puff, opened his mouth, and let the shreds of tobacco float out from the corner of his mouth. The little brother stood up straight, and slowly said, the Liberty of the silver-haired gang left the sea and flew towards an unknown place. Okay. Firebird paused with the hand holding the cigar, quickly raised his head, looked at his younger brother, and said loudly, what did you say? The silver-haired gang flew away, flew away? Firebird was confused for a moment, then his eyes lit up, and he lowered his head to look at the reward order on the coffee table in front of him. The stack of reward orders, the top one is not Sorata's but Ahua's. Obviously he had already guessed something. Apart from Marine, he is the only one who witnessed the scene where the 3 of Iowa and Kuina eat radish and have S**X. Of course, he knows what Iowa's ability means to the world government and Marine. Advertisement. After thinking for a while, he waved to his younger brother. I know, you go out first. That silver-haired guy. Brother Silverhair, I'll call him and the president later, and then think about the next thing. To understanding. The little brother turned his head, walked out of the room slowly, and closed the door. Squeak. The room suddenly became dark. Firebird relaxed his body, lay back on the sofa, thought for a while, then sat up straight, looked at the phone bug on the coffee table, hesitated and called Sorata. Although he didn't want to bother Sorata, but his task was to follow the silver-haired gang, and now he lost his target, and he didn't know what to do. After a while, the phone was connected. Firebird quickly picked up the microphone on the phone bug, and spoke first. Brother Silverhair, it's me, Firebird. At this time, the head of the phone bug suddenly changed into that of Sorata, and even the blue pupils in his eyes were exactly the same, which was amazing enough. The voice of the phone bug rang. Oh, it's Firebird, what can you do for me? Firebird carefully looked at the phone bug, and said softly, it's nothing, I just want to ask Brother Silverhair who suddenly changed the route and where he wants to go. Okay. A cold light suddenly flashed in the eyes on the phone bug's head, and an invisible aura acted on Huo Niao's body through the pupils, making Huo Niao's body stiffen suddenly, and cold sweat broke out. What do I do? Do I still have to report to your newspaper? No. Misunderstanding. Firebird shook his head again and again. I'm one-sided. I want to know the next destination of the silver-haired brother. I'd better prepare early, or take a good photo of your handsome heroism, won't you? Oh, is that so? The phone bug nodded, and then said, okay, put away your careful thoughts. Only you and Marine knew about Awa on the island at that time. You should know what his ability indicates to the world government. Firebird hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I know about Brother Ahua. Now that you know, it shouldn't be difficult to guess what I'm going to do next. Well, let's do it. You really have nothing to do these few months, so go to Alabasta. When you get there, you can inquire about information. When the time comes, I will send you a big news. What about the Drum Kingdom? Where is the news? It's just a little b********** D king in a small country. Okay, that's it, see you in a few months. Advertisement. As soon as the voice fell, the voice of the phone bug stopped abruptly, and his head changed back to that of a snail, obviously hung up by the other party. Firebird held the microphone for a long time without recovering, and muttered in his mouth, Alabasta, Pakistan Lock Work Agency, Shichibukai. The more he talked, the brighter his eyes became, and the more excited his expression became. Could it be that the Ball Lock studio is related to Shichibukai, K-Lock Dar, and Sorata's target may be K-Lock Dar? Firebird excitedly put down the microphone, stood up, and walked out of the room quickly. That's right, the Drum Kingdom is a small country. No matter how much trouble Sorata makes, it's just small news for him in the world. Unless Sorata wipes out the Drum Kingdom completely, but based on his understanding of Sorata's character, it's obvious that is impossible. So Sorata is right, the news of a small country is not as big as the news of Shichibukai. Hearing the sound of the door opening, the three younger journalists standing outside the door all turned to look at Huobird. Firebird quickly walked past the three younger brothers, stood at the bow of the ship, looked up at the Liberty in the sun with only a small black dot left, turned around and shouted to the three younger brothers. Change the course, let's go directly to Alabasta. When the boat approached, when they saw the figure on the boat carrying a huge ornate sword, they all froze in place, and then quickly separated one person, put down the wood in their hands, and hurriedly walked towards the rear. Not far away was a shirtless man helping the commoners, and carrying wood away. Big news again. Just as Sorata changed course and headed towards the unknown. Firebird waved his hand, turned to look at the sea. No, the silver-haired brother told us to go to Alabasta, we just do it. Oh, Alabasta? Not going to Drum Kingdom? To be able to drive such a small boat and sail on the Grand Line alone must be a great person. When Xiaozhou gradually approached, some sharp-eyed civilians had already seen Xiaozhou's appearance. The civilians who were busy repairing their houses only thought that someone went to sea and came back now. After a glance, he ignored it. Oh Alabasta. The third younger brother looked at each other, and excitement flashed in their eyes. It is not only the seat of the Neferutali clan, one of the 20 royal families that founded the world government, but also the territory of the Klakadar, one of the 7 warlords of the sea. A small coffin-like boat slowly sailed on the canal of the Kingdom of Bath. No, it cannot be called a boat, but a small boat. This is to fight Shichibukai. But on the pier, the guards helping to transport the timber, that is, the younger brother of Yuan Bada, are different. They have been bounty hunters for 3 years, Chapter 60 destination for the next few months. Looking at the figure that jumped onto the beach and slowly walked towards the pier. The guards all drew their weapons, their eyes full of vigilance. As the figure with the ornate giant knife approached, an invisible momentum came, slowly acting on the spirit of the guards, causing cold sweat to break out on their foreheads. Seeing that the atmosphere on the pier was not right, the civilians all around put down their work, jumped out of the house, grabbed various tools for work, and quickly surrounded them.
Sensing the movement, the figure slowly raised his head, revealing the eyes under the top hat, and saw him sweeping the numerous civilians on the shore with his eagle-like eyes, although he didn't show any special aura, but only his eyes. The eyes and eyes made the civilians stop in unison. The sense of oppression was so strong that the people didn't even dare to meet the eyes of this figure, but thinking of the peace they had finally won, they tightened their tools and stood firm on the guard's face, behind the team.
If you want to win their hard-won peace, you must at least step on their bodies first. Well, I'm in good spirits. The figure with eagle-like eyes spoke. He stared at the rear of the escort, walked to the shore of the pier, and stopped. Are you late? Here, he didn't feel any powerful aura, only one, but he could feel that although he was also a strong man, it wasn't the sword hero aura he was looking for. At this moment, the figures surrounding the pier gradually separated from the middle, and a tall figure stepped out from the middle. Bada stared at the side of the pier. The road was not tall, but it gave people an infinite oppressive figure, and said seriously, Hawkeye, what are you doing here? Such eyes, such a gorgeous black giant sword, on the Grand Line, anyone with a little knowledge will recognize this figure. The person who came was Dracul Mahawk, one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Known as Hawkeye Mahawk, known as the world's #1 swordsman. It is the ultimate goal that all swordsmen pursue in their lives. And the knife on his back is one of the 12 great swordsmanship, the strongest black knife, in the world with the title of strongest. Mahawk stared at Bada, and said calmly, don't be nervous, I'm not here to look for you. You didn't come to see us, so what are you doing here? Although the opponent didn't show any aura, Bada didn't dare to relax at all. The invisible oppression that the opponent gave him was the same as when he first met Sorata. Such a strong man, even if his injury has healed, he can't fight against it. I'm just here to find a guy to compete with, discuss? Bada lowered his head and thought for a while, we are both swordmasters, so we can only find Sorata. He then looked up to meet Mahawk's hawk-like eyes, which showed no sign of fear. You go. There is no one you are looking for here. Okay. Mahawk stared at Bada closely, then the corners of his mouth raised slightly. Advertisement: he doesn't dislike people like Bada. Don't worry, I'm looking for Yinfa, it's just a sparring between swordmasters, I don't want to do anything to them. Mahawk paused, and then said confidently, I think he is also a swordsman, so he should also want to see me. Bada looked at Mahawk, quietly activated his sense of knowledge, and found that Mahawk was really as he said, and did not show any malice. He thought for a while, hesitated a little, and finally said, Sorata and the others have already left. If you really want to find them, go to the Magnetic Drum Kingdom. Based on his understanding of Sorata's strength, even if he is the world's #1 swordsman, Sorata can't beat Sorata in terms of swordsmanship, but in terms of overall strength, Sorata is impossible to lose. And Sorata had told him long ago that his goal was to be the strongest in the world, so he would have to fight this guy sooner or later, so it didn't hurt to tell him. Drum Kingdom. Mahawk nodded, said, thank you, to Bada, then turned around and headed for his boat without delay. It wasn't until Mahawk's boat disappeared on the sea level that Bada turned around and said loudly to the surrounding people and younger brothers. Okay, it's okay, let's work harder and try to repair the houses on the pier today, here but the facade of our bath to the outside world. After the repair here, we will also repair the winery, and then we will reproduce the glory of our Bath Kingdom, Bath Wine. To understanding. The people responded loudly, then turned around, returned to their original posts, vigorously waved the tools in their hands, and quickly got to work. Boss, are you really all right? A younger brother glanced at the sea level in the distance, then turned his head to look at Bada. In private, they are still accustomed to calling Bada boss, but when outsiders are present, they will address him as, Your Majesty the King, or, Your Majesty. Feeling the worry in the younger brother's eyes, Bada turned his head, smiled at them and said, it's okay, don't you guys know about Sorata's strength? With that guy's strength, he will be the strongest in the world sooner or later. Now it's just face to face, it's just for the world's #1 swordsman. Bada clapped his hands, okay, let's go. We don't need to worry about Sorata, you should think about how to do a good job as your guard. Us? The little brothers looked at each other, turned to look at Bada, and muttered. You still talk about us, you are not much better. Say what? The younger brothers quickly turned around and ran away quickly. Brats. Bada looked at the younger brothers scattered in all directions, and the countless busy citizens in the distance, with infinite longing in his eyes. I really want to recover quickly. Then he laughed loudly, rushing into the countless busy figures. From a distance, he looks like an ordinary person, not the king of a country. Maybe this is why he is so popular with these people. In this world, although the kings of most countries regard their own and family interests as the highest principle of conduct, there is no shortage of King Bath, Bada, the king of Alabasta, Neferutari Kolbura, Sakura Flower Kingdom, Dalton. That kind of thing. A king who cared wholeheartedly for the common people. Evening. Advertisement facing the setting sun. The Liberty slowly landed on the edge of an island with particularly tall trees and loud roars coming from everywhere from time to time. Bo. Sorata looked at the giant smoking volcanoes in the middle of the island and breathed a sigh of relief. Finally reached. This is the first time he has flown in the sky with a boat, and he did not expect it to be so dangerous and tiring. Flying with a boat is not difficult for him, but flying on the Grand Line is an extremely dangerous thing. The ever-changing and extremely violent weather on the Grand Line made him have to devote more energy and strength to resist the dangers brought by the weather outside the domain. Although it was only a short day, this day was much more exhausting than fighting Kizaru and the Golden Lion. In fact, with his flying speed, he could have reached this island long ago. Still the same problem, this is the Grand Line, and it took him half a day just to find this island. This island was the destination of his trip, and it was the only island he knew in the first half, and even the world government couldn't imagine where he was. Little Garden. Also known as Pangu Island, it is the second island on the number 4 route on the Grand Line. This is an ancient island, on which there are many huge prehistoric beasts. These beasts are the opponents he has selected for the 3 of Ahua in the next few months of training. After fighting these giant beasts, there are 2 more powerful titans waiting for them. With the help of carrots, the 3 of Ahua will definitely be able to make rapid progress in the past few months. No matter what, they have to be trained to the point where they won't be instantly killed by CP organizations and bounty hunters so that they can continue sailing. Otherwise, Ahua can only be safe by following him all the time. How uncomfortable it is. In fact, there is no need for the world government to offer a reward to Awa. He is also planning to find a small island and train these guys well. He and Kuina also have to sort out what they have gained during this period. In fact, what he wanted to go most at the beginning was the island where Luffy trained in Calm Belt, but he didn't know the location, and there was no permanent pointer, so even if he wanted to go, he couldn't go there. And it's a bit far there, too. In the end, after much deliberation, this is the only place. In fact, it's not bad here, although the beast is a little bit worse, but there are 2 titans. These 2 titans were from more than 100 years ago. They fought here for 100 years. How terrifying is the fighting skills accumulated in these 100 years of continuous fighting and the use of power. Come to think of it, it might be beneficial to both him and Kuina. After all, what the 2 of them lack most is actually fighting skills and the use of strength. This is also a helpless thing, after all, their combat experience is too little. I hope these 2 titans will not let them down. Chapter 61 Pirate Hunter. 4 months. For the turbulent and magnificent sea, it seems that something has been forgotten, and it seems that nothing happened. Regarding the sudden disappearance of the silver-haired group who had been making big news a few months ago, the sea has not changed much, and there are still countless big and small things happening every day. The world will not stop running just because someone is missing, and time will still move forward. East Blue. A small sailboat is sailing fast with full sail. The Skull Pirate flag on the top of the mast rattled in the wet sea breeze. On the deck of the ship, there are still traces of water that have not dried up. It is obvious that the ship has just passed by, and it is not a pleasant journey. But when the lookout on the observation deck holds a telescope and looks at the fast-moving boat that is directly ahead of their pirate ship, he understands that their suffering has only begun now. With a pale face, the watchman quickly turned his trembling body, rang the alarm bell next to him, and shouted to his companions who were resting on the railing beside the ship. See! Pirate hunter, roar Noah Zoro. Okay. The pirates who were squinting, lying on the deck, basking in the sun, and looking like salted fish, when they heard Zoro's name, they stood up quickly and ran together as if they had heard something extremely scary. Go to the side of the boat and look towards the front of the boat. When he saw clearly the green-haired figure standing on the bow of the small boat ahead, with 3 long knives hanging from his waist. They took a step back involuntarily, then their pupils shrank rapidly, and they opened their mouths and shouted in horror. Quick, turn your head, turn your head. A pirate looked ahead, trembling all over. It's too late. Okay. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he quickly turned around and rushed towards the captain's cabin in the back cabin. Their captain is a big pirate with a reward of 7 million berry. Although the opposite is a ferocious bounty hunter who has recently become famous and killed countless pirates. But so many of them, plus the captain. He tightened the gun on his waist, took a deep breath, and knocked on the door of the captain's cabin. They are not afraid. Well, they're not afraid. When he heard the sound of the captain's cabin calling him in, he took a deep breath to calm himself down. Then he pushed open the wooden door of the captain's cabin, and with a harsh creak, his loud shout sounded. No, Captain, Pirate Hunter Loya Zoro, here we come. Advertisement, okay. The captain paused his smoking hand, slowly raised his head mechanically, turned his neck, and looked at the little boy. What did you say? Say it again. The younger brother couldn't help but tighten his grip on the gun handle, and said nervously, Pirate Hunter Zoro, here we come. The captain shook his hand holding the cigarette, his pupils constricted, his face froze, and he froze in place. The younger brother looked at the captain and asked nervously, well, Captain, let's prepare for the battle. Pirate Hunter Zoro is coming soon. The younger brother's voice interrupted the tense spirit of the captain. He threw away the cigarette in his hand and stood up quickly. Welcome. Welcome to a ghostly battle. He picked up one coat, put it on quickly, and shouted at his younger brother. That's the Pirate Hunter Zoro. A real murderer. Recently, he has heard about this guy more than once from his accomplices, what happened to the pirates who killed that pirate group today, and slaughtered that pirate group tomorrow. He didn't believe it at first. If there really is such a powerful bounty hunter, why stay in East Blue? It's not too early to go to the Grand Line. But when the pirate group he was familiar with also encountered Zoro, and there was no more news, he had a clear understanding of the horror of Zoro, a bounty hunter. He didn't expect that East Blue was so big. He just came out to sail, and fight teeth, because their pirate group had no money. Unexpectedly, the money was not stolen, but he met the person he least wanted to meet. The thought of his head, which was about to become the source of the other party's money, made his neck tingle. He took the gun on the side, put it on his waist, pushed open the door, and walked out of the room quickly. What are you still doing in a daze? Don't turn around quickly. When the captain left the room, he yelled at the stunned younger brothers on the deck outside. But the little brothers stood there, motionless, as if they had been immobilized by someone, ignoring the captain's orders they were usually afraid of. Noticing the strangeness of the younger brothers, the captain looked up at the bow of the ship. When he saw the green-haired figure squatting on the guardrail of the bow, his throat seemed to be blocked by something, and he wanted to make a sound, but why? Can't send it out either. It was still the brave little brother behind him. He emerged from behind the captain, looked at Zoro at the bow, and shouted loudly. Brothers, there are so many of us, come on, kill him. The captain was aroused by the younger brother's aura to be fierce in his heart, his eyes were bloodshot, he stared at Zoro, drew out the gun at his waist and fired at the bow of the ship. Go to hell. You green algae-headed monster, okay. Zoro, who was squatting on the bow, about to pull his companion up, seemed to have heard some particularly annoying title. He turned his head and looked directly at the captain through the gap between the bullets. Green algae head. With blue veins popping out of his forehead, he quickly drew his saber, holding one in each hand, and swung it in front of him, cutting all the bullets coming towards him in half. Then his legs kicked on the guardrail, and with a bang, the guardrail shattered and pieces of wood splashed everywhere, and his figure, like a teleportation, suddenly appeared on the captain's side, invisible to everyone on board, in front of you. Advertisement, green algae head, right? I let you call people random names. As he said that, he raised the long knife with his right hand and slashed at the captain's neck. Your head, I accept it. Puff, the knife flashed, the captain froze in place, his outstretched hand stopped in midair, holding the gun in his hand. The barrel was still smoking, but the light in his eyes was already going out quickly. You be asterisk 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 D. The younger brother next to the captain roared and quickly raised his pistol at Zoro. Puff, with a flash of the knife, he also froze in place, and the light in his eyes quickly dimmed. Zoro waved his hands to the sides, shook the bloodline off the knife again, and turned to look at the many pirates on the deck. It wasn't until this moment that the heads of the two people behind him shot up into the sky under the surge of blood, and their headless bodies fell limply to the ground. Boom. Boom. Boom boom boom. The sound of heads falling on the deck made the pirates' throats feel like they were burning with flames. They swallowed frantically, watching Zoro who was approaching them step by step, their pupils constricted to ultimate. Then, under a burst of excitement, a series of water traces flowed down their trousers and onto the deck. Several of them had white eyes, and with a plop, they fainted on the deck. Zoro looked at the pirates with a look of disgust in his eyes. He slowly put the knife in his hand into the sheath, and drew a third knife. These guys are not worthy of him beheading with, cracking the sea, only ordinary knives. Looking at these pirates who were completely terrified, Zoro just swung his knife lightly a few times. There were only a few white wind blades glowing with green light, quickly slashing across the necks of every pirate, so that these pirates died without any pain. He still can't slash the flying slash, exclusive to the real swordsman. But with his strength, it is still very easy to cut out the wind blade. He then walked carefully through the deck covered in urine and blood, and when he passed by the fainted pirates, he didn't hold back his hands, and quickly made a few stabs. This is the Zoro at this moment, stronger than the Zoro in Sorata's memory. Of course, the pirates are also more indifferent. Chapter 62. All are growing. At this moment, under the bow guardrail, a hand was suddenly grabbed, and the owner of the hand jumped onto the boat easily and stood on the deck beside the boat. The person who came was wearing a wine-red coat, with silver-gray hair, and looked handsome. This guy is also a student of Yiksen Dojo. He came to Yiksen Dojo after Zoro, and his name is Sokka. He is a warm-hearted, kind-hearted guy. He is Zoro's navigator who sailed on the sea during this time, and also Zoro's pirate hunter companion. This guy, like the three of Ahua, left the dojo a few years ago, but he has no family property for him to inherit, so he went to sea to become a pirate hunter. He met Zoro in a marine base in exchange for a bounty. He was very happy to see Zoro, and invited Zoro to hunt pirates with him on the spot. He knew Zoro's strength. Zoro, as the only one in the dojo who trains with Sorata and Kuina, it's no wonder he can be strong. Sure enough, he made the right choice. Since teaming up with Zoro, the bounty of the pirates they hunted has been getting higher and higher, and every time it is easy, there has been no danger. However, there is one disadvantage of forming a team with Zoro, that is, this guy kills the pirates without waiting for him to board the ship every time, which makes him feel completely unfulfilled, just like this time. The same. But this time he seems to have heard something funny, so he can laugh at this guy. Sokka looked at the oncoming Zoro and laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, the name, Green Algae Head, really suits you, Zoro. Zoro's indifferent face became even more indifferent, and he shouted at Sokka. You be asterisk 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 D. Do you want to fight? If you do, I will remind you of the fear of facing me when you were a child. Ha ha ha. Did you become angry from embarrassment? Sokka is not afraid of Zoro. Although this guy is very indifferent to pirates and enemies, he is actually a very gentle guy to people around him and civilians. You be asterisk 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 D. Zoro gripped the handle of the sea cracker tightly, then thought of something, and glanced at Sokka contemptuously. Every time it's so slow, I still don't deal with that pirate captain's head. As he said that, he proudly walked past Sokka and stood on the bow of the boat. It's the striker. You. Sokka looked at Zoro and roared angrily. Am I slow? It's you who kill too fast every time, okay. Don't make excuses for yourself, just take it slow and hit the ground. Zoro turned his head and glanced at Sokka arrogantly, then turned his head, and the sea breeze blew. Hurry up, your head will be difficult to deal with later. He had nothing to say to Zoro's words. He rolled his eyes helplessly, turned around, and walked across the stains all over the floor step by step. Advertisement. When he walked to the side of the pirate captain and looked at the dead head on the ground, he couldn't help but chuckled. What a monster. If he faced the character with a reward of 7 million before, he would have to be careful, and it would take a lot of effort to hunt it down. Thinking of the pirates they hunted recently, he couldn't help shaking his head, bent down to pick up the head, and threw it into the special bag hanging on his waist. Not to mention 7 million, even 10 million or 20 million, in front of this monster, it may be a matter of one knife. During this time with Zoro, his only feeling is, strong, too strong. No wonder, Sorata will be so special to him. Thinking of Sorata, he couldn't help turning around, walked to the bow, looked at the sea ahead with Zoro, and said, I haven't heard from Sorata for 4 months. I don't know where these guys are hiding now. Happy. Sorata. Zoro tightened the handle of Lehi's knife, thinking of his reason for going out to sea. His eyes couldn't help but become firmer. Wait for me to challenge. After going to sea for a few months, he can clearly feel his progress, and he can feel a force gathering in his body. Sure enough, fighting people is the best way to improve your strength. That power is what Sorata said, the power in everyone's body. Before long, like Kuina, he will be able to awaken his own power and become a true swordsman. When the time comes, he's going to the Grand Line too. Hey, that's right, what kind of outrageous thing did that guy Awa do to be offered a sky-high bounty of 500 million berry? Thinking of Ahua, Sokka couldn't help laughing and said, ha ha ha, this guy is the most timid of us, and I don't know what kind of mood he would feel when he saw that he was offered such a high reward. Ha 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 ha. Thinking of Awa, the corners of Zoro's mouth couldn't help but rise, showing a smile. Come to think of it, this is why Sorata disappeared for a few months. After all, that guy Ahua's strength. Needless to say, Sokka also understands that the strength of the three of Ahua is the weakest among them. They looked at each other and laughed out loud. Ha 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 ha. The sound floated around the pirate ship, floated on the sea, and floated far, far away. Advertisement just when Zoro and the two were thinking about Ahua's appearance. Awa is not what they imagined. If it is purely based on strength, Zoro might not be Ahua's opponent at this time. Grand Line, Little Garden. At the foot of the volcanic mountain in the center, there are countless huge dead dinosaur bones lying. Beyond dry bones. On the clearing, a huge white-haired rabbit was fighting a huge upright ant with 6 arms. The rabbit's eyes were red with blood, and the whole body was entangled with white water vapor. Water vapor is formed by the evaporation of sweat. Little Garden is a summer island, the weather is hot, and there is a huge volcano behind them, so the temperature is even higher. The battle between the two was so fast that ordinary people couldn't see it at all. They could only see 2 white and black lights colliding and entangled with each other. Bang bang bang. The sound kept ringing. On the edge of the battle, next to a huge dinosaur corpse, sat 2 tall and majestic titans. The titan is more than 20 meters tall. Even if he is sitting, he is about 10 meters tall. These 2 titans are the titan warriors who have been fighting in Little Garden, the 2 captains of the giant pirates 100 years ago. Dory, and Brogy. Dory, known as Blue Ogre, has a reward of 100 million berry. Brogy, known as the Red Ghost, also has a reward of 100 million berry. These 2 guys each captured a sea kings 100 years ago. But because of a little girl's question, they started arguing about whose prey is bigger. If there is no reason to argue, it can only be decided through a duel. So after that, the 2 have been dueling in Little Garden, and also agreed that every time the volcano in the center of the island erupts, there will be a duel, and in the end only the one who is alive can go back to his hometown. It is also because the duel has always been evenly divided. The giant soldier pirate group was disbanded, and the other titan warriors on the ship also returned to Elbuff village to wait for news. This wait is 100 years. I don't know if their crew members are still waiting for them in the village. Chapter 63. Goodbye, my friend. Cool. Wow 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 wow, it's ready, little Sorata. Brogy laughed loudly, looked at the grilled dinosaur meat on the huge fire in front of him, touched his head, and smiled at Sorata who was sitting opposite them. Those 2 children have made great progress. As he spoke, he glanced at the 2 Ahuas who were still fighting, touched the helmets on their heads, turned his head, carefully glanced at the wine jar next to Sorata, and rubbed his hands. Like a child begging for food. Little Sorata, you see the meat is cooked too, isn't it? Isn't it? Sorata was shirtless, and stayed on this summer island for 4 months. His skin was tanned, but it didn't affect his handsome appearance. His bronze skin made him look more masculine. He glanced helplessly at Brogy, grabbed the wine jug beside him, and threw it to him forcefully. No, take it. You've almost finished all the wine on my boat. Brogy quickly reached out to take it, pinched it carefully with 2 fingers, raised it to his mouth, and took a sip with his head raised. His sip is actually half a jar of wine. He didn't reply to Sorata's words, just smiled sarcastically, lowered his head, picked up the barbecue in front of him and ate it. Dory next to him saw that Brogy had wine, and quickly looked at Sorata. That, little Sorata, where is mine? Mine. Don't worry, there are all of them. Sorata glanced at Dory, grabbed the wine jar, and threw it to him. Although these 2 people are 300 years old together, their personalities are really. They do nothing but fight, eat, and sleep on this island. 100 years like this, it's also boring enough and tough enough. 100 years. That is such a long time for human beings. 100 years is enough for a person to reincarnate for a lifetime. After 4 months of getting along with Dory, they have become very good friends. He and Kuina have also learned all the fighting skills and the use of power from these two guys. Even the three of Ahua have learned a lot of skills in the use of power in the battle with them. Sorata grabbed the huge barbecue in front of him, tore off a piece forcefully, and opened his mouth to eat. Not to mention, these two guys have been grilling the barbecue on the island for 100 years, and it tastes really good. They ate it for 4 months, and they didn't get tired of it. Sorata put down the meat, picked up the wine gourd on the side, raised her head and took a sip, and said to the two, Uncle Dory, Uncle Brogy, let's bid farewell today. What? The two of them bit the barbecue in unison, then quickly put down the barbecue and looked down at Sorata. Have you decided? It was rare to see Sorata bring so much wine today, so they knew that Sorata and the others should be leaving. You must know that Sorata was so generous to them only in the first few days when they first came to the island. In the days to come, if they want to drink, they have to go through various soft and hard bubbles. Okay. Sorata took a sip of wine. It's been 4 months, and it's time for us to set sail. We humans don't live as long as your titans. Advertisement, 4 months is long enough. Now that you've decided, let's set sail. A man's journey is a boundless sea. Dory looked at Sorata, drank the wine in his hand in one gulp, then looked up and laughed out loud. You guys want to take advantage of parting and drink more wine. Brogy ruthlessly dismantles Dory. What is drinking more, don't you want to? Brogy was at a loss for words, and then said loudly with confidence. So what, I just want to drink more. He laughed out loud when he finished speaking. Cool, whoa 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 whoa. Sorata looked at the two of them, with the corners of his mouth raised, showing a smile. Okay, uncles, I'll leave these wines to you, I'll just buy them when I go to the next island. What a shame. The two looked at Sorata, turned their heads in unison, and then unceremoniously squeezed a jar from the pile of wine jars behind Sorata, and raised their heads to drink. They were already drooling over the wine in the pile of jugs behind Sorata. Even though he knew that Sorata was brought here, it was for them, but he still couldn't help his addiction and wanted to take a sip. At this moment, there was a fart-like, puff, puff, sound in the distance. Indigo, with his backpack on his back, walked quickly to Sorata, dancing and dancing. Okay. Seeing that Sorata was unmoved, he couldn't help but danced in place, and then danced with his hands and feet. Puff, 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 Captain, the Liberty is ready. So you can talk. Dory and Brogy looked down at Indigo in surprise. Sorata looked at the three of them, as if she was looking at 3 idiots, and couldn't help rolling her eyes. Get ready, let's go. As he said that, he stood up and shouted loudly to the two Awa who were still fighting in the distance. Awa, Aluo, okay, let's go.
To understanding. The two replied at the same time, stopped in place, and rushed towards Sorata quickly with a whoosh.
The speed was as fast as when they were fighting. Ordinary people couldn't see the figure at all. In fact, these two guys have learned the skill of shaving, which makes them so fast. Advertisement. The shaving technique is actually very easy to master as long as the body meets the standard, understands the principle, and practice more. This thing is not like moonwalk. For moonwalk, although Sorata knows that it is a further application of shaving, it is impossible to master it without countless exercises, even with his physical fitness. Now after 4 months of training, only Kuina has mastered the moonwalk technique. As for the three of Ahua, they have to go through a lot of practice before they can master it. After all, stepping on the ground and stepping on the air are two completely different concepts. Let's go. Sorata took the zonkong and hung it on his waist, turned to stare at Dory and the two standing up, and laughed. You don't need to give it away. We have visited all the places on the island in the past few months one more time. There is no reason not to send friends away when they travel far. Looking at Sorata, Brogy laughed and said, at least I'll send you to the beach, won't I? As he spoke, he subconsciously wanted to reach for his axe, but he only caught a stick. His axe and Dory's greatsword had long been broken in the fight with Kuina. Their weapons have long been overwhelmed after 100 years of collision, and will break down in the next few years, if not fighting Kuina. Looking at the wooden stick in his hand, Brogy was taken aback for a moment, then turned around, raised his feet, and headed towards the Liberty parked by the river in the distance. Let's go. Sorata looked at the two people in front of her, shrugged helplessly, and raised her legs to follow. Just send it, parting is to meet again. This sentence may be applicable to human beings, but for the long-lived Titan race, if they want Sorata to meet again, they may have to wait until when Sorata wants to come here. I don't know if it's the arrangement of fate. It seems that the pirates who have been to Little Garden have never met the huge golden island eater, waiting in the waters outside Little Garden. And they, like the Straw Hat crew, met by luck, just when Sorata looked at the big guy in front of him and was about to draw his sword. Behind them, a huge shockwave rubbed against the ship plank of the Liberty, easily piercing through the big guy in front. Obviously, they also enjoyed the same treatment as Straw Hat crew, allowing Dory and Brogy to join forces and use their Titan-specific skill, Hikoku, to send them out to sea. Sorata relaxed her body, raised her wine gourd, raised her head and took a sip, and shouted to the rear, "Goodbye, Uncle Dory, Uncle Brogy." Everyone on the boat turned around, raised their hands, and shouted to the back, "Goodbye. Goodbye my friend." The two of Dory stood on the shore for a long time, until the Liberty disappeared completely, and the volcano in the middle of the island erupted again. They looked at each other, dropped the club in their hands, and fought on the beach with bare hands. In the following days, Little Garden returned to its original state after losing Sorata's gang. It's just that the sound of weapons colliding that resounded throughout the island every day turned into the sound of fists colliding. This made the animals on the island, who were accustomed to hearing the sound of weapons colliding, uncomfortable for a while. But after listening to it a lot, I gradually got used to it. Chapter 64 World Summit Naval Headquarters, Marshal's Office. Sengoku stared at the document in front of him, thinking for a while. What the hell is Hawkeye trying to do? He has been wandering in the waters outside the Drum Kingdom for 4 months.
He opened another document, and saw that it was the news of Sorata's group.
His eyes lit up when he saw the sneak photo from the world government. This guy finally showed up. After disappearing for so long without any news, he thought that the silver-haired group was suddenly wiped out by something. But this was just his good thought. When he saw the news of the silver-haired group again, he suddenly breathed a sigh of relief in his heart for some reason. Enemies, especially powerful ones, are better kept under your nose. Marine is not afraid of enemies on the surface, but those who are strong and like to hide themselves most. Just like the previous Golden Lion, Marine was worried every day, for fear that this guy would fly over suddenly and invade Marine headquarters and various branches. This sounds unbelievable, but it is also a true portrayal of their hearts. With Sorata's strength comparable to Admiral's, once he disappeared, Marine really had to be on guard for a long time before letting down their vigilance. This is like the 4 emperors of New World disappearing, they also have to be vigilant for a long time. This is the world's top powerhouse, bringing him the deterrence of hostile forces. Therefore, every 4 emperors group not only has a large number of Marine and world government eyeliners outside, but also has a lot of undercover agents inside. Of course, except for the small pirate groups like Red Hair and Sorata. Even if they're pirate groups, Marine and world government want to send undercover agents, they cannot do so unless they accept a large number of affiliated pirate groups like other 4 emperors groups, so they can send undercover agents in. He looked at the news about the silver-haired group, and was taken aback for a moment, then turned his head to look at the news about Hawkeye again, and muttered, "So you're waiting for the silver-haired gang." He has always been wondering that although Hawkeye travels on the Grand Line from time to time when he has nothing to do, he never stays in one place for so long. Now seeing the news about the silver-haired gang and the time when Hawkeye appeared near the Magnetic Drum Kingdom, all this makes sense. He shook his head, closed the 2 documents on the desk, and handed him a white goat beside the chair. The goat looked at the document handed over by Sengoku, and its drowsy eyes lit up. It raised its head, grabbed the document in one bite, lowered its head, and ate it with relish. Advertisement. I don't know whether it was raised by Sengoku since childhood, or the paper is really so delicious. Anyway, this lamb can't do without Sengoku's documents. Sengoku patted the lamb's head, smiled, then raised his head, looked at another document, his eyes became serious. You don't even need to look at him to know what's inside. The above is the address of each member country of the world government. Soon, the World Government Conference every 4 years will be held in the Holy Land of Marijoy. At that time, their marines will all be dispatched to escort the kings of these alliance countries. During this period, all sea areas, even the pirates on the Grand Line, are most active. Every year, a large number of pirates who are not afraid of death attack the convoy, hoping to become famous. Thinking of this gave him a headache. Their marine is really a brick of the world government, and they can be moved wherever they are needed. He looked at the folder, shook his head, and didn't think so much anymore. Let's think about it and let those people escort them. Just when Marine was in full swing for the World Government Conference. Sorata's gang has been away from Little Garden for a day. During this day, they encountered many seagulls suspected of aerial surveillance. They thought that these seagulls were either from the World Economic News Agency or from the world government, or maybe both. He didn't pay much attention to these surveillances. With how much the world government attaches importance to them, it would be a ghost if there is no surveillance. I think the news of his reappearance should have appeared in the world government in the office of the Marshal of Naval Headquarters. Sorata looked ahead, stroked her chin, lost in thought. By the way, shouldn't it be the world government, the World Summit every 4 years? He remembered, as if it was recently, 4 years ago, he had seen the news about World Summit, but the newspaper didn't state the specific time of the summit, so he didn't know it. Picking up the teacup next to him, Sorata turned to Indigo, who was also lying on the recliner on his left, and said with a smile, "Dr. Indigo, when did you get so lazy?" Advertisement. Indigo sipped his tea and glanced at Sorata.
Calcalcock. I have been studying the viruses and plants in Little Garden for so long, can't I be allowed to rest?
Allow. Sorata took a sip of tea, looked at Indigo, and asked, "By the way, Indigo, do you know, World Summit?" World Summit. Indigo put down his teacup, sat up straight, and smiled at Sorata. "Captain, you don't want to make big news as soon as you show up." "No, anyway, I'm going to see Chopper, so I can kill this guy casually, so that the civilians of the Magnetic Drum Kingdom will suffer less. Isn't it?" He originally wanted to go directly to Alabasta, but as soon as he saw Bada, he couldn't help but think of this guy. Thinking of this guy, I couldn't help but want to kill him. For killing the king of a country, in Indigo's view, it is a trivial matter. Seeing that Sorata didn't look like he was going to make a big deal, Indigo put away the excitement that had just arisen in an instant. He lay back on the recliner, picked up his teacup, took a sip, and said, according to the previous few times World Summit's time deduction, if the time has not been changed, it should be in the last few days. If we are lucky, the guy you want to kill should still be in his country. This guy can be said to have formed two extremes with Bada of the Bath Kingdom. So he was not excited, on the contrary, he felt a little bit of a drop in price. Of course it's because this guy doesn't deserve to be the king of a country. The guy he's talking about is none other than Wapol, the king of the Drum Kingdom. A pirate group of their size, going to kill the king of a small country, is not a drop in price, what is it? And why is this guy so annoying to Sorata? So he asked Bada for 2 permanent pointers, one of which was from the magnetic Drum Kingdom.
This guy is stupid enough. As the king of a country, he didn't do a good job in economics and construction. Instead, he drove all the doctors in the territory out of the country, turning a well-known medical country into a backward country with extremely difficult medical treatment.
Sorata waved his hand and said, I just want to know the exact time. I have a guy the first one to kill. Don't be late. I missed it. That guy ran away. The total reward offered by the Silver Hair Pirates at this time has reached an astonishing 2.35 billion berry. Silver Hair is also known as the 5th Emperor of the Sea. Who called him a partner of justice? Advertisement Chapter 65 Wapol. Sorata understood Indigo's thoughts at a glance, and he rolled his eyes at Indigo. What happened to small countries? Isn't their king a big shot? It seems that everyone on board is inflated. It actually swelled to the point that killing the king of a country became a trivial matter. Sorata drank his tea and turned to look at Kuina on the couch next to him, with tenderness in his eyes. The one who has improved the most in the past few months is not Awa, nor Luo, nor Adao who just ate devil fruit, but Kuina. In the past few months, Kuina has not only fully mastered all the power skills of the great swordsman. It even raised the color of knowledge to a higher level. You must know that knowledge color is an ability that is more difficult to improve than armed color. With the strength of Kuina's armed and knowledge colors at this time, the General Marine Vice Admiral should not be her opponent at all. To fight her, at least one must be at the level of a ghost spider or a flying squirrel. And this kind of elite Vice Admiral may not be able to beat Kuina. If you want to win steadily, I'm afraid you need a top-level armed figure like Melisson. Therefore, her strength at this time should be at the level where she can fight Admiral a few times, instead of being easily killed in seconds. What's wrong? Kuina stopped staring at the newspaper and looked up at Sorata. In the past few months, the news on the sea has not decreased because of their absence. On the contrary, there have been a lot of big news because of the series of actions of the 4 emperors of New World. For example, Kaido committed suicide again, and while committing suicide, completely defeated the news of this year's supernovas. Anyone who knows this guy's personality can tell at a glance that this guy is actually looking for these supernovas. If he was really bored, he would go to other 4 emperors' regiments, or in the marine, to fight with real strong men, instead of committing suicide by jumping from a height of 10,000 meters. Don't look at Kaido's tall and burly man, just think that he can only do things with fists. In fact, this guy is a real pirate who is meticulous and strategic. Everything about Wano Kuni is the work of this guy. Another big thing is that last year's super rookie, Fire Fist Ace, after challenging Whitebeard for a few months, finally joined the Whitebeard Pirates, and as soon as he joined, he served as the second team of the Whitebeard Pirates captain. Apart from these 2 items, the news in the past few months is small news to them. Advertisement, fine. The corner of Sorata's mouth turned up, and he stretched out his hand to rub Kuina's head. It's because you seem to be tanned in the past few months. Oh. Kuina put down the newspaper, glanced at the color of her arm, then raised her head to meet Sorata's gentle gaze, her eyes narrowed into a crescent shape, and smiled. Do you not like it? I like it, I like whatever you become. Sorata answered quickly. Although they are all tanned, Kuina's skin is not as dark as Robin who has been in the desert for several years, but has a fleshy yellow color, which makes her more healthy than the original fair skin. Nice. You love it. The corners of Kuina's mouth turned up, and he looked up at the sky. It seems to be snowing. As she spoke, she stretched out her hand and took a snowflake that fell from the sky. But before he could see clearly, the snowflakes were melting in her hands. At this moment, Arlo's voice came from the observation deck above. Sorata, we should have entered the range of a winter island. I think our destination, Magnetic Drum Island, is ahead. 2 tentacles protruded from Arlo's head and moved, but he didn't sense any strange weather nearby, so the snow must be due to other reasons. On the Grand Line, if there is any reason to make the surrounding seas snow, except for special weather, it is only Winter Island. So he was sure that there must be a Winter Island ahead. Considering that Drum Island is also Winter Island, it is not difficult to know that their destination has arrived. Understood. Sorata replied loudly, withdrew her hand, stood up, walked to the bow, looked at the thick clouds in the sky ahead, and the snow that was gradually falling around her. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Wapol, get ready. Why are you dead? He looked ahead, shook his head, and shook the disgusted figure of Wapol out of his mind, then thought of the blue-nosed reindeer. The cold light in his eyes disappeared, and he smiled. At this time, Chopper is still studying medicine with that beautiful girl who is almost 140 years old, Dr. Kureha. In fact, his ideal doctor at the beginning was Chopper, but thinking of his own charm, Chopper may not be able to let Chopper go with him, and this guy's medical skills may not have graduated yet, and later he was lucky enough to meet Indigo, and invited Indigo to board the ship, and slowly gave up this idea. Although he gave up, he was still very interested in Chopper. Advertisement Drum Island. Bighorn is a village on the seaside of Magnetic Drum Island, where the Straw Hat crew landed on the island for the first time 2 years later. On the pier, a burst of laughter resounded throughout the harbor. Moo. Ha 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 ha. It's finally here, Marine. A fat, ugly man with deep purple hair, a huge mouth, and a cylindrical tin plate attached to his chin is riding a huge hippo, looking at the Marine warship in the harbor ahead, and laughing wildly. Hippo was followed by a team of doctors and soldiers. This guy is the king of the Magnetic Drum Kingdom, Wapple, nicknamed White Iron, the son of the previous king, and a munch fruit capable person. Paramecia. Munch fruit, is a pretty strong fruit. The ability user of this fruit can eat anything, even the ability user of the fruit, and fuse with it, so that the ability user of the munch fruit can use the ability of the ability user of the fruit he eats. But just like most capable people in the world of One Piece, Wapol's ability is only at the time when he just ate devil fruit, and he doesn't understand the follow-up development. That's why this guy got kicked out by Blackbeard first, and then got kicked out by Luffy. If this guy is really serious about developing the fruit, or using it for exercise instead of just eating it, maybe he will be another boss-level character that Luffy meets when he enters the Grand Line, rather than a simple elite monster. On Marine's warship, standing at the bow is a young Hanbu Rear Admiral. He is the Marine General who came to Magnetic Drum Island this time to escort Wapple to the Holy Land of Marijoy to attend the World Government Conference. He looked at Wapple with a serious face and said, "Wapple, let's go. Let's go directly to Saboti Archipelago." Moo. Ha 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 ha. Saboti's land? It's fine, the slave market there is still very interesting. Wapple laughed and seemed quite happy. That's right, not long ago, in his palace, he met the 10th civilian who came to beg him this month because of illness. Whenever he saw these civilians humbly begging him loudly for medical treatment, he was extremely happy, and he was extremely proud of his plan to drive out all the doctors on Magnetic Drum Island. This is his specially designed plan to rule the Drum Kingdom. In front of the hippopotamus, 2 of Wapol's subordinates, a black explosive head and an archer with a quiver on his back, listened to his king's words, and walked towards another ship parked on the pier first. This ship is the exclusive vessel of their king. The name of the ship is White Iron King. It is a large diving raider with a hippopotamus on the bow. What? At this moment, the leading archer, that is, Jess, suddenly stopped.